Hey guys, it's 1916, it's night, and someone hands you a candle and calls it light like that's a kindness. You're here because the ground eats men a little slower than shells do, and because when you move under the mud, nobody sees you, until they do. What happens if the clay talks back? What if the other side is listening harder than you are? By the time your lungs learn the taste of wet chalk and lamp smoke, you'll know. I don't dramatise this. I tally it inch by inch, the way pay clerks tally your breath. This channel doesn't wave flags. It hands you the shovel and tells you when to hold your cough. If you enjoy this kind of misery, go on and like and subscribe, keeps the candles stubbed and the shovels dull, drop a comment with where you're watching from, or rate the smell out of 10. Now get down the ladder, shoulder in, and mind your boot nails on the rungs. You're loud enough already. The shaft breathes like an animal with a cold. Every exhale damp and sour. You belly through, knees already wet, shoulders brushing timbers where sap hides under creosote and sweat. The candle's halo stutters yellow and mean as the earth nudges the flame with its cold lips. Kit is simple. Short-handled shovel polished by fear, a canvas satchel to swallow spoil, a coil of guide cord that pays out from your belt like your last line of credit. Above, men rehearse jokes for the listening posts. Below, you keep your mouth busy with breathing. Every scrape is a telegram to the Germans. One cough and you sign someone else's letter home. You move your weight the way a cat pretends to be smoke. The tunnel presses back like a tired horse that will kick if you push. There's no catalogue uniform for this, you wear what doesn't snag. Tunic sleeves shoved to the elbow, cuffs dark with the clay slime and sweat. The wool sours quick, wet dog old smoke, and your puttees soak and grip your calves like bad manners. Your pocket bread grows flatter and tastes like rope and regret. Tea looks right only because the candle lies. Duckboards are a rumour someone told you. Here it's knees and elbows and the paste that wants your skin. You carry a tin of bully beef that began as curiosity and now feels like a bet you lost. When the shift ends, if it ends, you won't remember eating it, only the aftertaste, like licking a nail. You scrape at the face. Careful. Always careful. The shovel's blade a whisper you muscle into quiet. Spoil slips into sandbags you squirm back to the sump. Each weighted sock an apology to your spine. The timbers tick and flex, wood complaining in a language you prefer not to learn. Somewhere a drip taps out its patience. You halt to listen, always halt to listen, and press a reed stethoscope to the clay like a doctor, with worse bedside manners. The clay tells a truth or lies, or keeps secrets because it enjoys company. On the far side, men fit geophones to the ground, earth and wire conspiring to make your sire map. You count between your breaths and the drip, and you chew your tongue because it keeps your mouth occupied. Ritual keeps you mostly alive. The candle is your air gauge. When the flame goes thin and blue, you back a yard and let the tunnel sip instead of gulp. You mark inches with the stubs of pencil on a splinter wire to the set. The numbers sweat and smear, but your knees can feel progress like bruises learning their alphabet. Between crawls, you pinch the wick and listen, then lick your knuckles where they split. Blood tastes like the shovel. Iron, dull, unsurprised. The guide cord hums faint against your belt when the bagman shifts. 2 tugs mean stop, 3 means back, 1 long pull means somebody changed their mind about living. If you're watching this from a heated room, don't complain about a draft. We would have killed for a draft that didn't smell like men who learned to breathe in mud. The noise arrives like a rumour with teeth. A faint shout, not yours, with a rhythm you didn't teach it. Somewhere in the clay your candle throws shadows like hands. It isn't your shovel, it isn't your bagman, it's a tidy German with an impolite pick, learning the same bad prayer from the other side. You freeze so hard your joints click like coins. The manual says, count 3 heartbeats, your chest bangs out 30 before discipline drags the numbers down. 2 quick pulls on the cord, listen. The tunnel becomes a held breath you share with men you can't see. The drip stops being water and becomes a drum you hate. You move your head a thumb's width. You listen so hard your teeth file your nerves. There. Scrape, pause, tap tap. They're polite, they're close. You back 3 knees. You dig a side pocket like a fox, small neat out of this main run, and lay out a primer the size of a thumb bone. The fuse coils in a careful S so it won't snag when you beg it not to. Clay tamping is a lullaby you sing to the bomb. Spoon, press, twist, pack, not too wet, not too proud. The bagman's breath fans your ear. Bully beef, tea, stale fear. You forgive him by not killing him for breathing. You listen with the reed. The scrape is closer now, optimism with a pick attached. You feather the fuse, measure the crawl back in heartbeats, run your thumb along the waxed cord like blessing a snake. If this goes wrong, the earth says, it will go wrong politely. You nod like someone offered you a seat you can't take. You signal again, 1, 2, and feel the answer twitch through the cord like a fish testing the line. You bed the charge a hand deeper than your fear. Tamp until the clay forgets you were ever here, and ease your body flat to let the fuse find its future. The earth is a mouthful of old pennies. You taste it because you press your cheek into it to make yourself smaller than your breath. Above you, judgment ties its boots. Ahead of you, strangers scrape forward, eager to meet you without names. You count, not out loud, mouths waste air, but with tongue taps against your teeth. 3, 2, 1. Somewhere in the dark, the fuse agrees to be brave on your behalf. Nobody coughs. Down here, you don't. Down here, you mouth the count and store the noise for later. You don't light the fuse with flourish. You coax it with a match that spits sulphur and stings your eyes. Then you cup the spark so the tunnel won't rob you out of spite. The fuse accepts the idea and begins to whisper. A thin, private promise that keeps time better than your heart. You reverse by elbows, flattening the burlap of old sandbags into rails for your ribs, breathing through your teeth so your chest doesn't kiss the roof and tell on you. The candle's halo thins and smears yellow across wet grains of clay like grease on glass. Your tongue tastes coins. Your nose takes on damp wool, lamp smoke, the sour of breath trapped too long in other men. You count the seconds the way a pawnbroker counts rings. Quick, exact, not sentimental. Far above, rain gives the trench its usual sermon on patience. Down here, you put your faith in hissing rope. The world narrows to your sternum and the hiss. The bagman's boot misses your knuckles by a finger's width, and you accept the near miss like a blessing you didn't earn. You slide past the first timber set and take a cough of second-hand air. Counting again, petty and precise, because petty and precise are still alive. Clay presses both ears the way debt presses a door, and your pulse bribes time with cheap quick coins. Your back finds the elbow of the run and you flatten, cheek on the cold damp wall, palm on the guide cord as though you could read futures through twine. The fuse talks itself brave. You mark your breaths against it and make yourself small, so small that your belt buckle feels like a brass bell announcing sin. 2 light tugs reach you, wait, and you freeze the way a photograph pretends to be a man. The blast doesn't arrive as thunder, it arrives as a door slamming in a house with no rooms. Pressure smacks your ribs in with the manners of a taxman, and your skull rings like a tin pail that someone owes money to. Every candle you've ever seen becomes one frightened animal, trying to hide inside its own light. Dust steps into the breath you are saving and makes it taste like old rain and pennies. Clay slips like wet bread. The roof drops a handful of its opinions onto your neck and shoulders. The timbers cough, reconsider and hold. The bellows tube jitters against your arm like something panicking in the sack. Your jaw locks and then remembers to unclench. You feel grit crawl across your gums like a cheap watch counting down to nothing, and you decide you will not swallow until the world stops shaking the table. You don't move right away. You inventory what didn't break by what still hurts. Fingers answer, enough. Toes sulk, but file attendance. The bagman rams the bellows forward. Rubber smells like hot tires and hospitals. A sour comfort that says the lungs get another chance. You pull that air in because ugly air is still air. The candle trims to a skinny blue blade and says, in the delicate voice only flame has, that oxygen is gossip today and not everyone's invited. The guide cord gives 2 tiny tugs. Wait. And you obey because obedience is cheaper than courage and buys more tomorrows. Dust shifts from slurry to fog to fine grit. A slow rain that taps your neck and settles into your collar. When your teeth stop ticking, you flex your hands and find you still own them, even if the tunnel thinks otherwise. You hear it then, the other tunnel's complaint turned into a cough that never finishes. You belly forward, careful, shoulders and hips moving like a stubborn drawer eased open. The pocket you made has done its rude work, the scrape from the far side has forgotten its lines. If this were a sermon, maybe pity would visit. Instead, the clay kisses your bare wrist where the seated sleeve rode up and leaves it cold and tacky, and the ache behind your eyes starts itemizing tomorrow. 2 new sets, 3 more bags, 1 more pencil stub shaved thin as a lie. You mark the timber with that stub, half-inch closer to the objective, half-inch farther from sleep, and the graphite smears into a bruise your glove will carry. You press the reed to the wall and hear only your blood and the drip, which is to say you hear nothing anyone can charge you for. Work returns like weather, without asking, without apology. You shovel the small roofful a spoonful at a time, each bite a ladled problem, the bag sliding past your hip in a lazy dance your back pretends to enjoy. The spoil is heavier now, richer with stink from clay that hasn't met daylight since superstition was young. Egg, iron, a fish memory that doesn't belong here. Your knees complain in a dialect older than swearing. One tug for water brings a dented bottle. Tin kisses your lip with a metallic shrug and leaves the taste of fence wire and tannin. The sip is warm and too short, and it tells you more about thirst than it cures. You hand it back, touch the set, test the roof with your knuckles, and the wood answers in a patient tick that says, "For now. Ritual again, because ritual is what passes for mercy." Touch the set, listen with the reed, scrape 3, pause 2, scrape 1, pause long, no reply. Either they're quiet or they're gone, or they're waiting with a joke you won't like. You notch minutes on a splinter wired to the timber, fat numbers laid down by a pencil that mostly smears, and you let the candle tell the truth about air. It gutters. You back a yard and let the tunnel sip like a tired mule instead of gulping like a drowning man. Etiquette survives where nothing else does. You cough into your sleeve and let wool turn it into a private sin. Above, boots thud on duckboards and a gun clears its throat like a landlord. Below you scrape again, and scraping is how time passes when clocks aren't welcome. You meet a seam that behaves like bad manners in polite company, wet sand with ideas about travel, and you halt because hurry is what makes roofs remember gravity. The set in front of you is 2 stout uprights and a cap that talks in tiny ticks. You slide in lagging boards like playing cards into a stubborn deck, each plank slick with clay in your fingerprints. The shovel is a whisper again. You take shallow bites and let the seam learn your patience instead of your name. You mark the cap with a chalk X where you want the next prop, then ease it in with the kind of tenderness you never bothered with when kissing, and the wood answers with a tired creak that means it will hold if you don't insult it. Sometimes the ground is kind enough for clay kicking, so you lie back on the cross like a tired saint and work the grafting tool with your soles, toes searching for purchase on iron that hates you less than most things. Calves cramp quick, thighs throb in a long, low argument you never win. The spoil slides into the sandbag as if it wanted a change of address, and the bagman ferries it past your hip with the lazy grace of someone who will regret this later. Your hands curl around the heel of the graft like you're holding a grudge. Each push peels a ribbon of clay that squeaks against the blade and sticks to your wrists in cool, miserable bracelets. Air again. The bellows tube nudges your jaw, asking to be considered, and you lean aside just enough to give it priority like a gentleman letting a ghost through a door. The candle fattens to yellow. Good. Then it slims, blue at the tongue. Not good. You reverse half a body and let the tunnel sip from the bellows instead of chew you into paper. Your breath learns to be small. Sweat beads in the hollow of your collarbone and turns the clay grit there into paste, a cheap poultice you didn't order. You hold the candle to the roof, it gutters and licks sideways, and you decide to believe it rather than argue. Eventually a pause is declared. Not mercy, just mathematics. And you wriggle backward to the sump where we store all the things we don't want to talk about. You piss into a battered tin that has known better employment and cap it fast. Etiquette for confined quarters. The bagman hands you bread staler than Bible pages, and a wedge of bully that has seen knives and lost every argument. The tea is a warm handshake from a reluctant uncle, brown, tannic, loyal within limits. You chew and listen. The earth keeps its voice low, and the reed stethoscope waits like a scolded child on your lap. There are stories about camouflets, purses of explosive that don't open the ground so much as sulk and suffocate it, and you picture the versions you were told by men who are better at telling than living. The far side lays charges to punch the air out of your work. You answer in kind when asked, because etiquette is mutual where murder is concerned. You practice hearing their rhythm. Scrape, pause, tap. The human metronome that betrays a shift as surely as a whistle. The geophone men up top draw little spiders on their paper, legs pointing where the sound walks, and you hope their spiders know your name. Shift change, when it finally arrives, feels like winning a bet you didn't place. 2 figures hump forward, shapes with lamps for faces, and you kiss the cord twice to hand over the narrow world. You back by elbows until the shaft's timber crib opens like a ribcage and the ladder appears, slick and splintered, smelling of creosote, old boots, and a forest that never asked for this. Up you go, boots groping for rungs you can't see, thighs shaking, shoulders carving fresh mud into the uprights. The surface air tastes huge and indecent, like you've walked into someone else's dinner. The dugout is a low wooden thought with too many occupants. You duck in, steam lifting off your shoulders like you're a kitchen you can't afford, and find space on a board that calls itself a bunk if you're not insulting. Boots under your head, knees to your chest. You let the tunnel keep digging inside your ears. A letter waits in your pocket. You read the same line 3 times, news of a garden, a neighbour, a hen that forgets where she is, and the paper smells of soap and the world not made of clay. You fold it small, stick it somewhere less damp, and try to sleep like a man who doesn't hear dirt think. Sleep is a bargain you strike with noise. The dugout sweats and mutters. Someone's tin mug clicks teeth against wood in a dream. Someone else saws the air into crooked planks with his snore, and a rat writes its name in the bread bin and doesn't bother with spelling. The candle by the door smokes and makes the roof look lower, which is considerate, because it is. Your tunic steams, your shirt sticks to your shoulder blades like a letter you can't send. Lice do the work of optimists along the seam of your trousers. Boots under the bunk smell like wet dogs that read the newspaper and didn't like the review. You fold your arm under your head, close your eyes, and let the tunnel keep digging in your ear, a small patient scrape that lives even when no one moves. The snore resolves into breaths, the breaths into counting, the counting into nothing useful. The corporal wakes you with a boot nudge that qualifies as affection. Back on gear checks itself. Shovel edge, thumb tested, reed in pocket, fuse length measured with Messier's fingers, bag ties knotted and tugged. Over the table a grease pencil map shows the line like a scar that never heals. Your bit is a narrow tooth angling under their forward sap, 2 yards shy by last count. Timber, 2 sets, pocket charge if they're lively, he says, voice threadbare, as if time has been wiping it with the same cloth as the mugs. Rations, bread that learned humility, tea the colour of old varnish, bully with its usual wet sawdust charm. You swallow, because refusing is a luxury save for the dead. Someone laughs in the corner. Nobody remembers the joke, only the sound. Down the ladder, the air changes its mind about being friendly. You meet the guide cord with your palm the way a priest meets a railing. Habit, respect, a small plea. The candle's tongue flickers fat, then thin, telling weather the way old men do, all complaint and accuracy. You belly on, elbows finding grooves they carved yesterday, knees negotiating with gravel that refuses to move unless bribed with skin. The first set greets your shoulder with an affectionate bruise. The cap gives a little dry tick-tick, which is the roof's way of saying mind your manners. Your breath turns into arithmetic. In for 4, out for 6. Pretend that makes a difference. Clay, cold, soaks through the tunic and into your ribs. You become an envelope, sealed. Listening is a skill nobody pays enough for. Reed to wall, cheek laid to clay, you catch the faintest arithmetic on the far side. Scrape, pause, scrape, scrape, a rhythm with a man behind it. He's close enough to borrow salt. You pull twice on the cord, steady, and feel the answer snake back. A pocket charge then, not a grand gesture, just a small rude punctuation mark in his sentence. You measure fuse with the stingy caution of a widow at a market. You want it short enough to interrupt, long enough to leave you available for future mistakes. The candle slims, blue-edged, and you back a span to let the tunnel sip. The bellows hose breathes on your jaw like a dog that can't decide if it loves you. Before the explosive comes carpentry. You ease in polling boards along the crown where the clay remembers rivers. Each board slicks your palm with cool slime and splinters a confession into your lifeline. A prop slides home with a noise like a man settling into a pew after a long winter. Another, heel-thumped upright, wedges under the cap until the tick stops complaining. The seam ahead sulks. A small roof flinch coughs dirt onto your eyelids, and you keep them closed because grit under lids is a lesson you don't need to repeat. You test the set with your knuckles. The wood answers in patient syllables. You accept the vocabulary and keep it small. Ammonal in a canvas purse is as innocent looking as lunch. You bed it in the side pocket you've cut, a neat foxhole in the wall's patience, and coil the fuse in a double S so it won't snag when the world panics. Clay tamping turns you into a careful liar. Press, pack, stroke, make it seem as if nothing ever happened here. Your fingers come away tasting of bitter dust. Your thumbnail shows a half moon of someone else's earth. You signal to, then light it with the match cupped like a secret. It hisses, private and determined. You reverse by elbows, ribs counting the rings in the timber, breath shaved thin so it won't rub the roof. The candle shivers, the fuse keeps its promise, and you make yourself smaller than your own shadow. The blow folds the tunnel's lungs and then lets them go. You feel it in your sinuses, a fist unclenching, and in your teeth, a small complaint from every feeling you never had. Dust moves past you like a new weather arriving rude and unannounced. The candle kneels and then staggers up again, thins and sulky. You wait because waiting is the only coin anyone accepts down here. Then nose forward into the dim where the pocket was. The far rhythm is finished. What remains is the soft aftertalk of settling clay and a drip that just remembered it had somewhere else to be. You hold your breath to make the silence louder. It does. You give it back in small change. A roof peel, a heel of spoil, and the pocket's mouth shows its teeth. You ease the wall, smooth with the shovel's back, apologizing by habit, and the tunnel looks ordinary again in the way a mouth looks ordinary after a tooth goes missing. You take 3 shallow bites, bag them, and slide the sock down the line where hands will make it music or misery. Air comes thin and metallic. You taste match, rubber, old pennies. You pull the reed out, press it to the wall, and hear only your pulse correcting your optimism. The bellows whispers along your cheek. The hose smells of damp canvas and a hospital corridor you will never afford. The set ticks once. You answer by touching it. Politeness saves more men than bravery. Nobody puts that on a poster. Routine closes its fist around you again. You notch today's inches on the splinter wired to the set. Fat, smeary figures that your sleeve will erase before anyone can accuse them of optimism, and switch the bag to your left hand because the right forearm buzzes, like bad wiring. The sump water is brown and honest. You wash clay from your knuckles and discover fresh skin the colour of old candles. A boot from above thumps the ladder twice, message received, shift nearly done, and you take a last listen with the reed. Nothing but the drip counting to itself and the small echo of your pulse asking for a chair. You pinch the candle out with spit-wet fingers, taste smoke like a burnt penny, and back away by elbows, each move a quiet apology to wood, to clay, to men you'll never meet. Up top, someone will ask how it went. You'll say, fine. It isn't a lie, it's a measurement. Relief smells like frying where no pan exists. Somebody up top finds a brazier and a ration of bacon as idea, and now the trench air insists on hope it can't afford. You sit on the duckboard lip of the shaft and let your knees argue with the cold while your back writes a formal complaint to your spine. A mug parades as tea. It tastes like roof tar and friendliness. The corporal takes your tally with a pencil gnawed to a beaver's dream. Inches advanced, sets placed, charge spent, one enemy rhythm politely interrupted. He nods like a man who has retired from surprise. You nod back like someone who has mislaid sleep. Bacon smoke threads the dugout and convinces nobody it's breakfast. You flex your fingers and feel clay still lodged in your knuckles, a cool memory with a long lease. When the order comes, listening post, your shoulders hunch of their own accord, saving you the trouble of remembering why. The listening post is a coffin with opinions. Sandbag walls patched with bully tins, a slot that pretends to be a window, a periscope that smells of old thumbs and older rain. You press a frying pan dish to the ground and call it science. The clay carries gossip, distant shovels from men who mistake patience for ownership, a far, thick thump where somebody else's argument reached its conclusion, the slow insect rumour of a sap roller inching duckboards across future mud. Your own gallery murmurs back through the soil in a voice you recognise the way you recognise your name pronounced wrong. You log noises on a damp card. Scrape single, scrape double, pause 15 uncertain murmur. A shell saunters off into mud, giving up the pretense of drama. You sleep badly, wake badly, and wear the result like an accessory no one should sell. Morning, if the trench allows such theatrics, arrives thin and grey, drizzle petty as a clerk. You thread a needle through a ripped cuff with hands that remember finer work and gift yourself a crooked seam. A chap with a potato face tunes a mouth organ to the key of apology. The tune climbs the fire step, looks over the parapet, and decides not to be shot today. The ration party drags boxes that smell of salt and decisions. Someone debates whether the marmalade contains fruit or merely ambition. You write 2 words on a postcard, "Still here," and stop, because anything more would be boasting. A runner appears with orders and shoes that don't quite admit him. Back below, the world resumes its hobby of pressing on you from every direction at once. The first yards of the gallery are a map written in bruises. Your elbows know where the splinters wait. Your hip knows which set to respect. Your left knee counts the sump lumps like rosary beads. Today you snake a coil of firing cable, copper guts wrapped in gutta percha, over your shoulder like a sullen pet. A shelf charge is planned forward, a bigger mouthful for a forward post too eager to claim rented ground. You feed out cable in neat loops, no kinks, no confessions later. The candle wobbles, then remembers dignity. The bellows man tastes dust and calls it a living. You strike a tight right niche called a kennel, room for a man and his bad ideas, and seat guncotton slabs like pastry you don't deserve. The smell is sweet, chemical, a cousin of soap that never met kindness. Primer cord grins yellow. You marry it to detonators with a priest's care and a thief's suspicion. Each squeeze of the crimper says you won't forgive yourself if you hurry. Behind you, the bagman ferries spoil by the sockful and returns it to the earth like reluctant charity. You tamp until the pocket looks like it never happened. The fuse plan sketches along the wall in calm curves that pretend confidence. Your tongue tastes metal. Your fingers taste like cold pennies in a shop you left without buying anything. The roof sulks, sighs, then drops a handful of dirt the way a waiter lays a bill. Formal, inevitable. You freeze until the cap timbers tiny ticks forget the joke, then ease an extra prop under it with the soft authority of someone installing bad news. The candle tongues blue. You back until yellow apologizes and returns. Air prices itself dear. The bellows man works like he's cooling soup he can't afford, and you tilt your head to reserve quiet cubic inches for future arguments with gravity. Drip develops a personality and insists on your neck. You let it. You whisper fuse lengths as catechism. 18, 12, 6, main. The copper cable rests against your forearm like a sleeping serpent that prefers you nervous. When the shelf is set and the fuse plan looks like a polite sketch, you wriggle backward through your own history. Every knot in the core becomes a date you didn't celebrate. 2 tugs for ready, 3 for retrieve. The answer creeps back along the twine like tin on a dry tongue. The corporal's voice scrapes down the shaft, flat as unbuttered bread, counting seconds for the test. You pinch a match, invite the fuse to a brief career, breathe once the way schools used to teach, and begin the long, small retreat. The tunnel tightens out of spite, your ribs cue to pretend they are doors. The hissing behind you is a cat that promises not to be your problem if you don't look. You reach the elbow, listen hard for nastiness, spend 1 inch of air like you paid full price, and file relief where inspection won't find it. They hand you the exploder like a family heirloom nobody wants to inherit. Boxy, chipped, brass terminals bright with other people's thumbs. You check the line twice, then once again, because twice was a rumour, and 3 times buys sleep later. The corporal watches with an expression that has stopped trying to intimidate, and now just hopes. You shout nothing, sound is a currency you don't spend underground, and raise one eyebrow that means ready. He nods a nod so small it would fit in a thimble. You plant your boots, set your jaw, and push the plunger. The magneto bites your palm and your forearm, abuzz with the breath of lightning and old bicycles, and somewhere in the dark your careful, ridiculous diagram becomes decision. The ground exhales through your boots. The trench's boards tremble like uncertain teeth. Air goes thin, then thick, then smells of warm metal and insult. You wait because clever men died hurrying. The candle's flame kneels to a blue blade, then fattens back to yellow with all the dignity of a drunk standing up. Dust grows out of nothing and puts its hands in your mouth. The bellows hose flutters against your sleeve like a frightened eel. When the corporal finally says, "Right," he doesn't mean right. He means not obviously wrong. You go down with the reed and the coil, knees finding yesterday's bruises like old friends at the bar, and the septics greet you in small patient syllables that say yes, we argued. And yes, we held. The pocket mouth is gone, folded back into clay that pretends it was born smooth. You taste iron, resin, and the faint pear drop reek of guncotton, like a sweet that hates you. You put your ear to the wall and hear only your pulse filing reports. Repair is the part nobody sings about. You comb the fall with your hands first, feeling for malice disguised as kindness, slabs that look settled but want your skull as a souvenir. The shovel goes to work like a therapist who charges by the minute. Small bites, no bravado, respect for collapse. The bagman slides socks past your hip and the sump slurps them away with the greed of a landlord. You plant a new prop, heel thumped into the place until the tick-tick turns thoughtful, and you lace a polling board across the crown where the clay remembers being a river. Your breath comes back in coins, cheap, dented, still illegal tender. The reed tells you nothing useful, which is often the most useful answer. You lick grit off your lip and discover blood by taste, a quiet copper note under the general mud. Trouble arrives with manners. The roof gives you a small polite cough of dirt, then a larger, less polite one that brings a board with it. You roll your shoulder into the set and jab the heel of a prop under the cap in a single unsaintly prayer. The bagman's ankle vanishes under clay to the knee. He makes a noise men make when a doctor enters with a tray. You go small and fast, hands digging with the stupidity of love, and the clay returns him by inches, sock and all, like a customer arguing with a receipt. The candle gutters out. Dark is not dark, it's pressure with the lights off. You listen for the skinny hiss of escaping air where a crack might be. You hear only the bellows man swearing softly into the hose like he's apologising to your lungs. The flame returns, sulky and needed. You both breathe like thieves. Up top, the rain has committed. The trench becomes a study in gravy. You stand on the fire step and watch a shell elsewhere lift its muddy skirt and sit down heavily. Somebody's frying a mystery in a pan that has seen better mysteries. A lad offers you a cigarette that smells of hayloft and secrets. You accept because air already tastes bad. The periscope shows a grey that would like to be a colour route when it grows up. A chap in the next bay reads a letter aloud to whoever will inherit the words. A market day, a broken gate hinge, turnips large enough to be mistaken for policy. You touch the paper in your pocket like a saint with a stolen relic. The corporal taps your sleeve with his pencil, another hour, then back in, and you nod, because nodding is cheaper than having opinions. Mail call pretends to be mercy. You get a scuffed parcel with your name spelled like a cousin. Inside, socks that hope, a biscuit that died for the cause, a scrap of cheese wrapped in paper that smells like a drawer. There's a tiny tin of condensed milk, the trench's only proof of heaven, and you trade it for a candle stub because belief is a luxury and light is rent. You scrawl 3 facts on a card. Still here, ground stubborn, bacon rumoured, the mouth organ tries a march and decides against leadership. Someone offers a story about a German who knocked on a sap wall and asked for a light. The punchline is that nobody laughed then either. You fold the card, tuck it near your ribs, and chew the biscuit until it becomes the idea of food. Back under, the theatre resumes without intermission. New noises approach from the far side, pick, not kick, a clink with impatience. So you slide a fresh side pocket and set a Camouflet to stop the conversation without turning it into a sermon. You measure fuse with your widow's caution. Kiss the set. Dunne set. Whisper to the candle by holding your breath until it believes in itself again. The bagman's boots anchor your spine. 2 tugs from him say steady, and you borrow his steadiness because yours is out. Light, hiss, revere, the old waltz with a partner who always leads. The pocket goes off like a door slammed by someone who doesn't live there. Silence returns, broad-shouldered and smug. You smooth the wall with the shovel's back, apologise again because you're superstitious, and add a fat grim number to your splinter tally. Tomorrow you will move forward an inch that weighs more than any mile. Night decides to be louder. You're halfway through a careful scrape when the wall gives you a story you didn't ask for. A faint, very tidy tap that arrives in groups of 3. Like a clerk who still believes in forms, you flatten, cheek to clay, and count the cadence on your tongue the way a miser counts rent. Tap, 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 pause, tap, tap, long pause, not yours, not friendly. You thumb the reed tighter to the face and feel the vibration crawl your jaw like a cold insect. And something in your ribs votes to leave without you. 2 tugs down the cord. Listening. The answer pricks back. Steady. You slide a side pocket to your left. Not because you love symmetry, but because you'd like your head to remain in its current address. Primer, fuse, tamp, the old rude courtesy performed with slow hands and a mouth that refuses to waste air on prayers. The detonation is not theatrical, it is administrative. Pressure signs a document all at once and hands you the carbon copy. Your elbows thump ribs, your teeth complain with small civic pride. The candle kneels, sits, stands. Dust reaches into your nose with an ink-stained finger and writes its opinion on your sinuses. You lie there and wait for everything to admit it happened, then move 3 knees forward with the professional laziness that saves necks. The pocket's mouth has been erased. Polite, swift, indifferent. You touch the set, it ticks a patient amen. You press the reed and find only your blood counting. The bellows whispers over your ear like a confessional with bad advice. You scrape a test bite, lift it to your nose, egg, iron, old cellar, and take that as proof the ground would like the conversation postponed. Surface duty arrives in a coat of rain and mud that identifies as policy. The parapet leans, pretending to be patient. The duckboards buckle like old men rising. You're sent to fetch more timber caps, which means a sprint bent double along a traverse that insists on collecting knees. Shells far off perform sit-downs. Closer in, a Minenwerfer clears its throat and the trench replies by pretending it was always shorter. You pass a man counting grenades with his lips, and a boy coaxing a brazier that smells exactly like all the bacon you'll never meet. The timber stack greets you with creosote and splinters. You shoulder 2, feel them notch your collarbone with the intimacy of debt, then run the reverse. Boots sucking at boards, wet wool rasping your neck like sandpaper with opinions. Back at the shaft, you feed the caps down and your shoulders remember love as a rumour. Return below, the air is older by hours. A new seam, fat sulking mobile, decides to audition for River again. You switch to clay kicking, back on the cross, heels on grafting tool, calves knotting, thighs writing essays in ache. The spoil peels into the sock with a lewd slurp that promises a bill later. You time kicks to breaths. Push on the out, breathe on the in, and let the bellows man aim generosity at your jaw. The candle trembles, then schools itself. Your tongue counts the hisses, the fuse will one day imitate. When numbness arrives in your toes, you accept it the way men accept relatives. Politely, without confessing dislike. You swap to hands, shovel whispering against the face, and the wall responds like a mutter handing over coins. One at a time with commentary you don't need. A roof shiver turns to a roof idea. You stop. The cap mutters a new vocabulary, and the uprights answer in syllables you respect. You slide another prop forward, heel kick it home, and feel the tunnel consider you like a landlord weighing furniture against deposit. Behind you the bagman coughs once, apologises, wedges his sleeve into his mouth, and tries again at being a rumour. You hook his shoulder and tug him back 2 feet so that if the roof decides to become ground, he'll arrive only late, not first. You both listen. The earth practices forgetting your names. A drip finds your collarbone and insists. You allow the relationship. You mark the splinter tally with fat graphite. 2 inches today, a mile tomorrow, disguised as another 2 inches. You admire the lie because it isn't pretending to be truth. It's pretending to be patience. Rations take their turn disappointing. You and the bagman split a tin of something that answers to stew if threatened. It's warm, salty, and tastes like a rumour of cow. Tea arrives, brown and loyal, and the condensed milk you traded away earlier sends its absence as flavour. You bite biscuit and it resists like policy. You persuade it with spit and persistence. The reed rests across your knees like a bored ferret. You close your eyes for the length of 100 breaths and see the tunnel anyway. The candle's small sermon, the walls leaning in to hear the punchline, the sets doing their best to pretend they were born trees. When the corporal's tap reaches your boot sole through wood, you open your eyes and discover you were always awake. You swallow clay at the back of your throat and call it breakfast cousin. Work slides back on like an old coat that fits where it rubs. New noise, not scrape now, but a thin, whispering fizz that can mean gas down here. Stale pockets exhaling after insult. You snuff the candle with pinched spit, taste smoke like a burnt penny, and let the bellows do the liturgy while you nose the tube's end along the face. Air returns not sweet, but less insulting. You relight. The flame tests blue, then grows yellow hair. You add a small drain hole at the foot, a miser's pipe for fugitive air, and the sump burps in appreciation that smells like eggs and apologies. You laugh once because if the earth is going to be frank, you might as well meet it halfway. Then you straighten 3 inches of wall with the shovels back and say sorry to Clay, because sometimes you believe it keeps score. A message filters down the shaft in the delicate handwriting of Boots. 2 quick taps on the ladder rungs, then a longer one. The corporal's etiquette for attention. You and the bagman make the tunnel presentable. Tools stowed, fuse ends tucked, faces wiped with rags that only move mud around. And then you listen. The reed reports nothing, which is sometimes the loudest report. Far above, a flare opens like a pale flower and washes chalk light through cracks. Shadows crawl in new directions, which down here feels like the ground changing its mind about what is up. The candle's flame contracts as if embarrassed to be seen. You press cheek to Clay, feel it cool and damp as an unvisited cellar, and wait until silence becomes a texture. Then the cord tugs once, a question, and you answer with 2 small pulls that mean steady. Etiquette survives even in tunnels, otherwise we would all be animals who forgot they could count. When the word comes, advance, you decide not to take it personally. You scrape shallow, numerous, respectful, a tenant requesting an extension from a landlord who already dislikes you. Clay behaves, which means it offers resistance you can budget. You work by inches so stingy they would embarrass an abacus, shaving the face with the shovel's back, slicking the crown with a board where the seam dreams of travel. The candle warns twice with a thin blue tongue. You bow your head and let the bellowsman earn his keep by puffing life where the air sulks. You breathe through your teeth to keep your chest small and your noise smaller. Spoil slides into a sock past your hip and away into the sump with the greedy sound of rent being collected. The set ticks approval in little wooden syllables that say, "Keep your manners and we will keep ours." Somewhere behind, a man coughs in the way that isn't a cough, so much as a memory of one, sealed into sleeve and swallowed before it becomes a signal. You remember the first lecture. If you cough, everyone above pays for it. You learn to press knuckles to your throat until the urge forgets its name. Now you practice the trick again, staring at Clay 5 inches from your nose, tasting pennies and tea and the lardy ghost of breakfast. The breath you spare leaves your mouth sideways, tasting of tallow lamp and old canvas. Your shoulders itch where lice draft new borders across your seam. The reed lies across your forearm like a bored ferret waiting for its next appointment with worry. You count 6 slow breaths, the candle fattens back to yellow, and you let yourself believe in forward again, but only as alone. A visitor arrives. A sapper from the next gallery over, big in the shoulders, careful in the hands, a man who knows where to put his weight so roofs forget him. He brings news of a side drift that wants to meet yours on terms neither of you chose. You share the reed and the candle, passing them like 2 miserly priests arguing over a relic, and listen. He taps a guess on your wrist, 2 yards, maybe 1.5, and you consider a grenade pocket, then reject it because the seam here hates surprises even more than you do. Better a camouflet and courtesy than a loud opinion in the wrong place. He grins the weary grin of a man who has memorized 9 kinds of dirt, then wishes your timbers well and shoulders backward into his own patience. You remain, because that is the job. You set to carpentry with the patience of a widower. 2 props, a cap, a polling board tight to the crown where the clay drools, wedges kissing wood like debts coming due. Each heel thump sends a polite tremor into your shins. Each knock with the hammer tells the roof it can keep its secrets a little longer. You mark the cap with chalk, date, inches, and initials that look like someone else's because your hand forgot roundness. The bagman counts bags under his breath like a gambler studying a deck he can't quite shuffle. The bellows tube breathes on your jaw, warm, rubber-scented, like a tired dog promising it will try again. You stroke a thin skim of clay smooth with the shovel's back and apologize to the wall for asking it to pretend. Trouble prefers small beginnings. The candle's flame jumps sideways and shows a thread-thin crack tracing along the crown like a pencil testing paper. You slide the shovel's handle under it, easing weight into a new prop while your shoulders pretend they have never heard of panic. Clay powders your tongue. The bagman's boot skids. His knee bumps the set. You bark his name in a whisper sharp enough to shave. He freezes. You place a board, heel it home, and the crack stops writing. You breathe again, a narrow, rented breath that tastes of match and damp wool. The set answers with a calm, ticking grammar you decide to trust for at least 5 minutes. By the time relief arrives, You have advanced the world's most expensive foot and earned a harvest of aches you'll plant again tomorrow. Up the ladder. The dugout exudes steam and conversation. A man from home swears he saw frost bloom on a duckboard that wasn't there a moment later, and everyone agrees that sounds right. You drink tea so strong it blames you, then trade an almost useful button for a crust almost worth eating. Someone reads a newspaper 3 weeks dead. The war on the page is crisp and tidy, and nobody present recognises it. You tuck your reed into your pocket like a pen you plan to forget, lie down on a plank that calls itself a bunk and close your eyes. The tunnel keeps digging in your ears while your hands practice the idea of stillness. You wake to the taste of old nails and the feeling that your gums have been holding meetings without you. Orders arrive folded in the corporal's voice, another push toward the forward sap that likes to pretend it owns the future. The trench map on the table shows pencil spiders, legs for galleries, a fat body where somebody thinks the Germans listen hardest. You scratch at the lice parliament in your collar and decide democracy has limits. A man from a different county swears he can smell clay from home when we're deep enough. You tell him that sounds like grief with good manners. Kit gets its once over. Reed, fuses, detonators in their tin like sour sweets, candle stubs, a fresh crayon of chalk. You sling the coil of cable like a tired snake and nod, because nodding is the only language anyone's funding today. Down the ladder, air changes from opinion to policy. The sump has gone from sulk to joke. Water kisses your wrists cold and makes your sleeves cling like needy friends. New bagman today, small, deliberate, with a cough he keeps chained in his sleeve, and you teach each other's rhythms by not dying. Your knees find every lump they filed yesterday. Your hip greets the cap timber that always underestimates itself. The candle lifts its yellow head, remembers it is mortal, and bows to blue before returning to decency. You mouth the old arithmetic, breathe small, scrape smaller, and the cord against your belt hums faint messages from behind. 2 tugs for steady, 3 for stop, 1 long for the kind of news that doesn't require adjectives. You fit your cheek to clay, and it fits back like a cool hand that isn't yours. Work begins as if it never stopped. Your shovel learns the face again, shallow bites, low noise, the manners of a tenant keeping the neighbours polite. The reed reports a faint, testy scrape that goes nowhere in particular, as if the far side is thinking with its hands. You cut a side pocket the size of a fox's bad idea, and decide to keep it empty for now. Grenades make enemies of roofs, and you've already got enough of those. The bagman murmurs numbers as he drags socks away, 4, 5, 6, like a man counting a prisoner's steps to the door. Spoil smells of iron and egg. A cellar that forgot wine. You lay a polling board along the crown where the seam yearns for travel, and your knuckles answer with splinters that feel like consequences. Trouble visits dressed as sheer weather. A puff of cool, stale air, one will be, snakes past the candle, and turns the flame into a rude blue blade. You pinch it out, taste smoke like a burnt coin, and press the bellows tube along the face, snuffling the seam like a dog hunting apology. Gas? Maybe. Or just clay exhaling after remembering gravity. You cut a weep hole at the foot with the shovel's toe. The sump answers with a brown belch, and the air admits to being merely unpleasant instead of inventive. You relight, hold the flame low to test its religion, watch it yellow, and give the bellows man a nod that says, "Keep trying, I'm not finished wanting lungs." The crackle in your ear turns out to be your own jaw. You unclench and hear the tunnel again instead of yourself. Preparation becomes a ceremony. You run firing cable forward, paying it out in friendly loops that won't later confess against you. Continuity test, a tiny buzz in the line that makes your palm tingle, and your teeth recall bicycles. Guncotton slabs sit in their wrapper, like butter you can't afford. Ammonal waits in its canvas purse with a schoolboy innocence. You build a mouth for it, a kennel neat and smooth, then line it with board as if making a cradle for something you dislike but respect. Detonators marry primer under your thumb, each crimp a small vow you don't intend to break. The fuse plan hangs in easy S-curves along the wall. Good handwriting for once. You tamp clay over each indiscretion until the face looks ordinary, which is the lie every good tunnel tries to tell. Topside coughs communicate in a different grammar. A whiz-bang trills its idiot song and sits down too close. The parapet sheds a little sand with a sigh like an old horse. Someone shouts for stretchers a traverse away. Someone else swears at a brazier that believes in smoke more than flame. You drink tea the colour of varnished doubt, and it warms somewhere that isn't improving your mood. A letter surfaces from yesterday's pocket, garden doing, hen sulking, a neighbour whose name you promised to remember, and the paper smells faintly of soap in a room with windows. You touch the postcard's edge to your lip like a secret sacrament, and put it away before the clay claims ownership. The corporal's pencil taps the ladder once, ready, and the tunnels inside your ears lean forward to listen to themselves. Firing resumes the old debate. The exploder's handle is worn where generations of palms paid their dues. You confirm the line because hope is free and error is expensive, and then you press the plunger with the grim tenderness you reserve for things that kill politely. The current walks the copper to where your neat ceremony waits. Pressure arrives through your boots like a verdict delivered without gloating. Clay shudders, remembers, then composes itself. The candle bows and rises. Dust rushes into your nose to leave its signature. You wait the count you were taught by men you can no longer name, then return with the reed. The wall is a quiet that isn't lazy. You smooth your hand along it, apologise because you always do, mark a fat new number on the timber with chalk you flatten to a blade, and breathe a mouthful that tastes of eggs, pennies, and the dear stupid notion that tomorrow might accept another inch. A new order scribbles itself across the table. Drive to the enemy saphead and sit under it like a bad thought. No more, no less. You take the sentence underground where orders stop being words and turn into weight. The first yards are a prayer you say with knees and elbows. A seam wakes cranky and tries to migrate. You soothe it with polling boards and quiet hands. The candle nags blue, fattens yellows when the bellows man courts it with patient puffs. You learn the face's mood by taste. Iron when it sulks. Egg when it remembers old floods. A chalky nothing when it hides. Your shovel whispered is because the roof prefers whisperers. The bagman counts bags like sins returned to sender. You sight along the crown and see the small sag that thinks about becoming a collapse. You answer with a prop heel thumped home until the tick-tick in the cap becomes patient grammar. You mark inches with blunt chalk and tell yourself a lie you have earned. Mind your manners and we will keep the roof believing in you. Noise changes shape, not scrape now, but a soft pad-pad thud like boots on folded blankets. The far gallery shoring maybe, or a sap roller dragged by a difficult optimism. You pinch the candle out, press reed to clay, and let the tunnel borrow your ear. The vibration is low and patient, not yet impolite. It speaks in the grammar of men who have time to be cautious. 2 tugs to the bagman. Hold. You measure a pocket in the left wall, like a tailor measuring a troublesome shoulder. Thumb, knuckle, span, and start the tidy crime of tamping ammonal into space the ground didn't authorise. Fuse coils in a soft S so it won't snag when time becomes narrow. Clay beds over it in careful strokes, a lie stroked smooth. When you're done, the wall looks ordinary, which is the best disguise in any war. The camouflet goes off with a tired cough that still moves the world. Pressure pushes your ears flat from the inside, grit finds your gums, and insists on residency. The set ticks, considers, and holds its opinions politely. You wait for the sound you dread, timber becoming arithmetic, and hear only clay rearranging its misery into new shapes. The bellows man shares air like bread, and you take it in short, grateful bites. When dust stops writing on your lungs, you edge forward and test the roof with your knuckles. It replies in patient syllables. You smooth the face with the shovel's back until it looks like you were never rude. The reed hears nothing but your own pulse arguing for a raise. You lick a cut on your thumb and taste old pennies. You count 10 slow breaths because that is how you buy the next 10. Shift brings a new bagman with a voice that lives in his nose, and a grin he misplaces whenever he thinks. He brings a rumour. The enemy gallery is lacing tin cans to its face as bells, a cat's cradle of string meant to sing if you breathe wrong. You shrug in the small way the roof allows and make your own string sing. Guide cord against belt, a private hum that means living. Together, you crawl the run, shoulders passing splinters they have known a week. You add a crib along the crown where the seam drools, wedge kissing wood like debts collected. The candle shows a thin blue tongue. You back a span and let the bellows give the flame its courage. You chalk the cap, date, inches, initials that no longer resemble your name. The numbers will smear back onto your cuff and call it bookkeeping. Topside lends insult as weather. A minion coughs and the trench squats lower, pretending it always fit. You sprint a traverse for more props, bent in the shape of your future, water slapping your shins, creosote cutting your nose with railway memories. A private from some place with better pastry shouts, "Watch!" as a basket of bombs kisses the parapet and argues with gravity. You shoulder 2 caps, feel them notch your collarbone with spouse-like accuracy, then run the reverse, boots sucking at boards, wool rasping your neck. Down the shaft, the lamplight turns timber into dark honey. You pass the caps to hands you can't see, and the tunnel eats them, with the appetite of a tired animal, and asks for proof you remembered how to be careful. The far side answers, this time with a cleaner scrape followed by a tap-tap that doesn't bother with charm. Close, so close you can put a number on it with your teeth. You still your body the way men stop clocks in rooms they are leaving. Fuse, primer, purse, hands assemble a polite interruption without admitting to nerves. Tamping is prayer with clay for congregation. Press, pack, stroke, forget. You lay the line in a soft S. Count 30 for the elbow, 20 for the set, 10 for the kennel, and add 5 heartbeats for the liar in you that always underestimates distance. You signal the bagman 2 small tugs and get his steadiness back through twine. You light the fuse with a match you treat like a secret, then reverse by elbows, ribs pretending to be doors, tongue counting rings in timber, and reserve each breath as if air were wages. The blast rips quiet into clean pieces and rearranges them. Boards complain, then forgive. The candle bores, resurfaces thin, and grows its yellow back by willpower and bellows. You weight and inventory yourself by ache. Nothing new beyond a bruise shaped like a sentence you can't finish. At the face, the wall is smooth as a lie polished for Sunday. The reed hears only water counting. You shave 3 spoonfuls, bag them, and tell the set you intend to be gentle, which is almost true. On the splinter tally, you lay down a fat figure with chalk flattened to a blade. The number means less than the habit of making it, but habit is what digs. The tunnel breathes on you, damp and mineral, and you let the breath pass through your teeth while the ground keeps whispering its unhelpful comfort. Still here, still here. Someone up top decides we deserve culture and sends down a chaplain who crouches in the shaft like a kindly spider and says a prayer that fogs in the lamplight. You bow your head because roofs are vain and enjoy it when you practice humility. He leaves a tin of peppermints that tastes like the inside of a clean pocket and promises to remember names there isn't room to write on any paper we own. The corporal handles the tin with the solemnity of logistics and announces that grace will be rationed on Thursdays. You slide 1 mint under your tongue, and it wages a brief noble war against clay, bully beef and lamp smoke. It loses spectacularly, but dies with honour. The bagman pockets another for later, and claims it's for his cough. Everyone believes him because lying costs air. Chaplain touches the timber, calls it steadfast, and the timber answers with a tick that sounds like faith pretending to be wood. He goes, and the tunnel resumes its hobby of pressing you into a shape the earth finds acceptable. Advancing becomes arithmetic mischief. You shave the crown thin and slide a polling board in smooth as a lie told for kindness. The seam sighs and forgets its plan to travel. The shovel's socket chews at your palm, so you wrap it with rag and invent a glove that promises fewer blisters and more honesty. Clay strings to your wrists like bracelets you hate admitting suit you. The candle fidgets because the bellows is all breath and very little poetry. You nod at the hose and warm rubber humours your jaw. 2 tugs from behind, steady. The set ticks its modest grammar. Here. Hold. Enough. And you obey because timber speaks the only language that doesn't need shouting. You mark an inch with chalk flattened to a blade and decide not to be sentimental about it. A trickle begins where no trickle should. Cold water writing its name along the floor with a finger that has opinions. You cut a gutter with the shovel's toe, give gravity a suggestion, and the sump clears its throat like a drain learning manners. The smell is egg and iron, a recipe no one ordered. Your socks take the news quietly and become 2 pale crimes the court will ignore. The bagman mutters trench foot in the tone of a solicitor itemizing doom. You tell him he can keep both feet if he convinces them to stay. He tightens his laces with the piety of a man addressing a congregation of 10 toes. The candle lowers its head to blue, then grows back yellow when the bellowsman bribes it with breath. You breathe through teeth and pretend the tunnel is merely unfriendly. You cut a kennel on the right for a camouflet you hope not to need, lay guncotton like hymn pages, and tamp as if teaching clay to forget. Detonators marry primer with an audible click that reminds you of pocket knives and cracked walnuts. The fuse coils in an S so economical even an accountant would applaud the curves. You sketch the plan on the wall with chalk shaved to a shark fin and label the loops by heartbeat counts, the only watch that keeps time down here. The bagman passes you the purse like a midwife who's seen worse. You bed it in and make the wall ordinary again. Ordinary is the best disguise in any war. You tell the roof, out loud in your head, that you're trying to be polite. Surface announces a mood swing with a flare that washes the shaft lip in milk blue and prints your shadow on the boards like a request for volunteers. Someone shouts incoming with excellent timing. A shell sits down nearby with the social skills of furniture thrown from a window. Dirt peppers the shaft planks, considers a grievance, and declines. You rest your head against the timber and let the vibration settle into your teeth. In the dugout, a mouth organ attempts cheer and lands on resilience instead. The corporal chalks a fatter arrow on the map and says tomorrow like it's a soup he intends to share. You count the timbers between shaft and face and rehearse the route like an apology. Tea appears, brown and stern. It burns its way to a small improved corner in your chest and reminds your ribs what warm feels like. Then the pencil taps the ladder. Back to it. Back in, and the tunnel remembers you in the knees. The candle licks blue, scolds yellow, then decides to behave. You lie on the cross and work the grafting tool with your heels, calves writing essays you won't submit. Spoil slides into the sock and past your hip like a secret you decided wasn't worth keeping. Read to wall. Faint scrape, small pause, tap. There's their clerk with forms again. You choose rudeness modestly. A thumb of ammonal in a side pocket, fuse like a small intention, tamp enough to make the wall forget your name. Light, hiss, reverse. The blast arrives as a door shut in a quiet house. Pressure smooths your lungs the wrong way, then returns them. Dust introduces itself to your tongue with poor manners. You count breaths and decide to forgive the air. At last, stoppage. The reed hears only the drip and your blood writing postcards. You smooth the face, mark a figure on your tally splinter, fat, satisfying, doomed to smear, and replace a prop whose top has begun to chew the cap like a nervous tooth. The bagman flexes his ankle and finds it still attached. He looks at you as if you did that on purpose. You tell him to tell his ankle to pay rent on time. He grins the grin of men who will sleep and call it victory. Up the ladder you go, shoulders burning in a language that has forgotten adjectives. The dugout meets you with steam, socks steaming on a stick like surrender flags that learned stubbornness. Someone has found a crust. Someone has lost a button. You drink tea and taste fence wire and relief. You close your eyes and the tunnel keeps digging in your ear, patient as rain with nowhere else to be. Sleep makes no promises and keeps them anyway. You wake to the sound of water teaching boards a new language. The dugout smells like men pretending to be soup, wool and steam, and a rumour of bacon that exists only in grammar. The corporal's pencil taps the map with the impatience of weather. The enemy sap is here, your gallery is here, and between them lies clay with a temper. You rub your thumb across the chalk scar on your cuff and find yesterday's inches coming away on the skin like borrowed courage. A mouth organ coughs itself into a tune that tries to be cheerful and lands comfortably on stubborn. Tea appears, stern and brown, and you chew it with the biscuit until both agree to be food. You tighten laces, check the tin of detonators the way a priest checks for pages, and nod at the ladder. The reed sits in your pocket like a polite accusation. You deserve it. The shaft's ribs close around you with the warmth of a barn that dislike guests. Your boots find rungs by memory and hope. Your hands slide on creosote that smells of railways and old decisions. Below, the bellows hose waits with rubber patience. The candle is already a small sermon, yellow with ambition, blue at the tongue when air thinks twice. You ease into the gallery and it greets your shoulders with familiarity that borders on contempt. The sump licks your wrists, cold and brown and unpersuaded, and you feel grit migrate into cuffs as if your clothes were acquiring geography. 2 tugs on the guide cord reach you and you answer with one, onward, and the line settles against your belt like a tame snake reconsidering wildness. You lie on the cross, heels on the grafting tool, and begin the day's argument with the seam. Kick, breathe, scrape, breathe, the metronome that buys inches. Clay peels in cool ribbons that smear your wrists into bracelets you'd never admit suit you. The bagman works like a tide. Sock forward, sock back, a quiet, relentless exchange of burdens. You set a capboard close where the crown drools a thought about travel. The timber answers in ticks that feel like grammar lessons. The candle narrows and you bow your head to let the bellows man purchase yellow again. A faint scrape rises in the wall like a throat clearing from another room, not yet impolite but aware of you. You stroke the face with the shovel's back to quiet its memory, and listen with the reed cheek cooling against clay that smells of egg and respect. The sound fades into drip and patience. You introduce a camouflet to the right like a whispered suggestion at the back of a meeting. Guncotton slides into the kennel with the smug innocence of bread dough. The detonator clicks with a domestic confidence that doesn't belong here. Fuse coils in a tidy S that you pet flat with 2 fingers, the way you once smoothed ruffled hair you no longer remember the name of. Tamping is apology in slow motion. Press, stroke, persuade the wall to pretend. You notch heartbeat counts into your teeth, 30 to the elbow, 20 to the set, and let your tongue hold the numbers for safekeeping. At the cord you signal 2 for ready. Steadiness returns through twine like a reassurance whispered under a door. The match's sulphur bites your eyes, the fuse accepts the idea. You withdraw by elbows and ribs, body learning to be a letter folded small. The blow arrives like a door encouraged to close by weather. Pressure pats your lungs the wrong way. Dust writes its initials on your tongue and signs with a flourish. The candle kneels, stands, and forgives you. You wait the agreed count because agreements are the only luxury you still afford, then nose forward, testing with knuckles. The roof replies in patient syllables. The set's tick sounds like a teacher keeping attendance. You smooth the pocket's mouth into a face that could pass for ordinary, and take 3 shallow bites for science. The reed hears nothing but your blood making its usual notes. You decide that silence and boredom might be cousins after all. You chalk a new number on the tally splinter and let the clay smear it into rumour. Topside calls you unwilling with rain that believes in thoroughness. You hustle a traverse for more props, bent double in the shape the war has chosen for you, and creosote steals into your sinuses until every timber feels like a railway you can't afford a ticket on. A Minnan coughs down the line. The trench answers by pretending it was always lower, and someone yells for stretchers with the unusual clarity of necessity. You shoulder 2 caps, collarbone learning their names, and run the reverse with board slapping boots and water choosing ankles as a hobby. At the shaft lip, a flare bleaches everything into chalk. Your shadow looks like a man who used to stand straighter. You feed the caps down to hands you don't see, and the earth swallows them like a tired animal that intends to keep chewing. Back in, the gallery is warmer by body count and meaner by inches. The seam ahead has developed opinions about gravity. You argue with an extra prop and a polling board that kisses crown like an apology. A new bagman has a cough he keeps chained in cloth. You give him a peppermint from the chaplain's tin, and watch his eyes practice disbelief. Work resumes its imitation of prayer. Scrape, pause, listen, scrape, pause, listen. The reed returns gossip that can't decide whether to be important. You choose to be courteous anyway. You end the shift by writing a fatted, ugly number on the cap and smearing it on purpose with your sleeve, as if to prove that nothing keeps its shape down here, not even the arithmetic that makes a man. The day decides to be mud from the first minute. You crawl in with socks already the colour of regret, and the tunnel greets you with a damp handshake that leaves your sleeve heavier than you remember owning. A listening watch sits in the kennel behind, boots off, ear to reed, and you take the forward face because the clay has learned your name and forgives you faster than most. The candle tries a blue tongue. You bow your head. The bellows man gifts breath, and yellow returns like a shy apology that hates being noticed. Your shovel learns silence again in shallow, patient bites. Each bag slides past your hip with the lazy greed of rent. You mark the cap with chalk you flatten to a blade, numbers that will smear onto your cuff and pretend to be bookkeeping later. The new bagman is a quiet lad with a repaired boot and a cough he has trained like a circus dog. It jumps through a sleeve and lands silent. He mouths the number of sacks as if praying. You mouth the number of breaths as if haggling with your own ribs. A seam wakes sly and tries to travel along the crown. You arrest it with a board slick as a fish, sliding it under the cap while the set mutters grammar you can feel in your knuckles. The reed, when you press cheek to clay, reports a faint human scrape somewhere ahead. The kind you only hear when you've become a small enough animal to deserve it. Orders arrive folded into a rumour. The far gallery may be stringing tin can alarms, so you must be quieter than your bones. You shorten the shovel stroke until it looks like stinginess instead of labour, and lay cut burlap on the floor so the bagman's socks won't gossip to the roof. You move the candle to a lower niche, where its light will warn you without announcing you, and soot paints shorthand onto the timber that never asked to be a ledger. A small side pocket takes shape to the left, tidy as a drawer, for a camouflet you hope will be enough courtesy if arguments get close. Topside pays a visit in sound. A minnon sits down like a drunk on fragile furniture, and the trench above answers with a shower of resentful earth. The shaft timbers thrum once, twice, then settle into their usual plank religion that believes in holding more than hoping. In the dugout, someone starts a song and coughs out of it before the second line. Someone else remembers a soup from home and misremembers it into a miracle with turnips the size of policy. You think of a hot towel at a barber's, the way steam kissed cheeks, and the tunnel rubs your jaw with cold clay until that memory behaves. The scrape from a head sharpens, not loud, not close enough to loosen a prop, but definite, with a clerk's certainty. Scrape, pause, scrape, scrape. You choose courtesy armed with explosives. A camouflet purse tucked to the left in a kennel neat as a drawer. Fuse lies in S-curves, tamped with damp clay, persuaded to forget the crime. You kiss the set with your knuckles, feeling its patient tick answer like a teacher who still likes you. Then give 2 tugs along the cord that mean ready. The match flares sulphur and bites your eyes. The fuse accepts the idea and begins to whisper. The blow arrives exactly like paperwork. Final, flat, undeniable. Pressure pats your lungs in the wrong direction, then remembers manners. Dust writes your signature on the inside of your teeth. The candle goes to a knee, then an elbow, then stands with help from bellows breath that tastes of rubber and effort. You wait because clever men died sprinting towards silence. Then forward, test with knuckles, smooth with the shovel's back, listen with the reed for arguments you failed to end. What remains is drip, and the small polite gossip of settling grains. You shave 3 spoonfuls and the wall looks ordinary again, the best lie. Relief is a brazier hissing on the damp boards, tea the colour of fence stain, and a biscuit that requires negotiation and witnesses. You stand on the fire step, steam lifting off your tunic like a cheap miracle, and read a postcard that says very little and means everything. Frost on the bucket, neighbour's gate mended, a hen that refuses to lay where asked. You press the card to your lip the way men used to kiss saints, then fold it small and hide it from clay. The corporal mutters inches into his ledger, underlines tomorrow, and points at the shaft. Your shoulders hunch before your feet have time to disagree. Back under, you rig a hessian curtain across the kennel mouth, brattice by another name, so the bellows will favour the face instead of wandering like a drunk sermon. The wet rag you tie across your mouth smells of old soap and a cupboard. You pretend it helps because believing is faster than arguing. The candle's flame grows a thin blue beard, then fattens obediently, and you repay the favour by scraping softer than conscience. A drip insists on your neck until it feels like a companion animal that doesn't know boundaries. You accept the friendship. When relief touches your boot sole through timber, you reverse by elbows and climb into air that tastes indecently large. The dugout is a warm quarrel. Someone trades a button for a spoonful of condensed milk and calls it justice. You mend a torn puttee with black thread and whitish mud, a seam that looks like honesty. Before sleep, you lay the reed beside your bunk so your ear can stop being an instrument. It doesn't. The tunnel keeps digging in your head, and the last thing you hear is the candle explaining patience to the dark. The next watch begins with boots whispering decisions down the ladder. You inherit a candle with a nervous spine and a hose that smells like wet rubber and hospitals. The corporal's voice travels as a pencil tap. 2 sets ahead, pocket ready, no heroics. You take the gallery's temperature with your cheek. The clay is cool as a cellar that never met fruit. Your shovel pretends to be modest and takes thin, exacting bites, the way a miser eats a cake he didn't pay for. The bagman is new and moves like a man who apologizes even when he breathes. You nod without looking, because looking is a noise. The cap timber replies to your knuckles in syllables you accept for now. You notch the splinter tally, fat numbers that stain your cuff, and tell yourself the lie that keeps you moving. Manners buy inches. A seam wakes with ideas about travel, and you answer with carpentry. Polling boards slick as a fish slid into the crown until the drool becomes grammar. The candle grows a blue beard. You bow your head and let the bellows man buy back you yellow with breath he can't afford. Your tongue tastes coin, Your nose tastes egg and damp wool. Your ears taste the reed's patience, which is to say you press harder until it tells you nothing at all, which in this business is good news. Behind, the guide cord drums your belt like a polite knuckle on a door. You reply with 2 small tugs that mean steady, which is also a prayer you won't write down. You meet a pocket of sand pretending to be cooperative and teach it humility by taking it sidewise, cutting a kennel neat as a drawer. Guncotton chair sit in their wrapper with the innocence of bread. The detonator clicks, with domestic confidence that belongs in kitchens, not clay. Fuse loops into soft S-curves you pat flat like a worried hare. Tamping is the old apology. Press, stroke, make the wall ordinary. Ordinary is the only magic you trust. The bellows hose nudges your jaw, rubber breath warm as a tired dog, and the candle thanks it by remembering colour. You sketch the fuse plan on the face in chalk ground to a blade. 30 to the elbow, 20 to the set, 10 to the kennel, because down here your teeth are your watch. Noise shifts like weather trying on a hat. The far side offers a thin, impatient scrape followed by a tap-tap that can't be bothered with charm. Close enough to price in teeth. You still everything that moves, including thoughts. 2 tugs to the bagman, listening. He returns steadiness through twine like a promise he intends to keep. You lay a camouflet purse where courtesy requires, tamp until clay forgets infidelity, light with a cupped match that bites your eyes, and reverse by elbows, ribs pretending they are doors. The fuse whispers, a cat you won't look at, and the blast arrives like a registrar stamping a line through somebody else's claim. Pressure flattens, returns, dust writes its initials on your tongue. The set ticks, considers, and decides not to be dramatic today. Repair is your penance. You smooth the mouth of the pocket until the face looks like a lie rehearsed for Sunday. The reed hears only drip, a metronome that never gets promoted, and your blood filing proper forms. You place a prop where the cap chews its nail, wedge it home with a heel thump that travels up your shin and sets up house behind your knee. The bagman passes a sock with the economy of a priest passing plate. No speeches, no coins dropped loud. You drink a thumb of tea from a dented bottle. It tastes like fence wire and good intentions. Your jaw unclenches by accident, and you hear the tunnel again instead of yourself. You add a number to the tally splinter, smear it into rumour, and decide rumour is honest enough. Topside drags you up for timber like a reluctant dog dragged past a bath. The trench is gravy to the ankles and creed to the nose, creosote, cold bait and wet wool a rumour of soap. A flare irons the sky flat, your shadow looks taller than the man who wears it. A minion coughs, the parapet pretends it always sat lower. You shoulder 2 caps, they find the notch in your collarbone like old friends who owe you money. A boy offers you a cigarette that smells of hay and excuses. You accept because air already tastes terrible. Back at the shaft, lamps turn timbers to honey you can't lick. You feed the caps down to hands that exist as grip and breath, and hear your own name travel back as a tug on the cord. Work waiting with its hat on. Underground again, the world narrows until it fits between your cheek and the shovel's back. New bagman coughs into cloth and makes the noise disappear. You reward him with silence. A crack pencils itself along the crown and you slide a board under it the way a valet slides a hand under an elbow. The roof thinks about you, then thinks about staying up. You hold still long enough for it to choose dignity. The candle fattens. Air decides to be generous for half a minute. You scrape 3 small bites, bag 2, and keep the third as proof you were here. When relief taps the ladder, 2, 1, you mark the cap with a chalk figure you'll forget by morning, mouth the old arithmetic, still here, still here, and back away by elbows, taking your body with you because nobody else will. Morning invents bathing from nothing and dares you to call it luxury. You warm 2 inches of sump water over a brazier that smells like every bad decision made near bacon. Then shave by a mirror the size of a biscuit tin lid. The blade jumps because your hand is all gravel. A nick blooms bright and tastes like the shovel. Feet next, socks peeled, toes interrogated, heels rubbed with whale oil until your hands smell like a harbour you can't afford. A corporal with the bedside manner of a ledger inspects blisters like he's pricing fruit. Lice attend in their usual evening wear. You pinch 3, catch 2, lose 1, and call it a draw. Tea arrives brown and stern. You dunk a biscuit to coax it into the species of food, then button your tunic by memory, and promise your feet a dry day you probably can't deliver. Orders are polite but unsteady. Push a listening chamber closer to the sap head, no more than a man's height beneath it, and lay cable for a charge that isn't a sermon, but might be a suggestion. You check the reel, copper gut tucked in gutta percha, then the exploder's terminals bright with the nervous polish of thumb grease and superstition. Detonators sit in their tin like sour sweets. Guncotton lies patient, the good student in the front row. The map shows pencil spiders again, their legs overlapping, where everybody pretends not to be. You tap the chalk line with your finger, and that finger comes away white, a saint of arithmetic who forgot prayer. The corporal says, "Mind your manners," which means everything else you've learnt the hard way. Descent, and the gallery greets you with damp breath and a ceiling that thinks about you too often. The first crawl is a shoulder-width throat. You ease into it until the timber kisses your cap brim and scuffs your ears. A minor roof sulk drops a plate of dirt on your neck. It finds your collar like a letter that knows the address. Candle goes thin and mean. You bow solo, your ribs practice being hinges. The bellows man gifts breath that tastes like warm rubber and clean lies. The flame fattens and forgives you. You wriggle past the elbow past a prop that chews your sleeve and lay your cheek on clay cold as a forgotten cellar. Read to wall, nothing but drip and your blood-making lists. You decide to like that answer. Main charge is a phrase that behaves like gravity. You cut a kennel large enough to offend, then line it with board so the roof forgets to notice. Ammonal arrives in canvas purses that pretend to be groceries. Guncotton primers grin their prim yellow. You crimp detonators with the care of a midwife signing a form. Cable runs the wall in soft S-curves, each loop a quiet promise not to betray you under pressure. Tamping is the same old apology. Press, pack, stroke, until the face looks as ordinary as a lie practiced since childhood. You scratch the plan on the clay with chalk shaved to a blade. Counts by breath, not by clock. Because down here time belongs to ribs. The candle approves by staying yellow. You approve by not saying anything at all. On the fire step at stand to, the night pretends to change its mind about being rain. A private sings half a verse about a woman who never met this mud. He stops where the rhyme would compound the lie. Fritz throws up a flare and the sky goes milk blue. Shadows rear like horses nobody can feed. A whiz-bang sits down 3 bays over and persuades a man to remember his god by first name. You tighten a sandbag seam with frozen fingers and breathe creosote until railways live behind your eyes. Someone shares a cigarette that tastes like hayloft and apology. You mark the dugout beam with a smug inch, drawn blunt and fat, then smear it with your sleeve because nothing down here keeps its edges, least of all hope that fits on wood. Back under, near enough that numbers feel impolite, you hear them clay kicking, heels on grafting iron, that rhythmic squeak like a small animal with bad lungs. You still your teeth so the reed can be smarter than you are. Close, you choose courtesy with explosives again. A thumb of ammonal in a side purse, fuse laid like soft cursive, tamping that persuades forgetfulness. The match bites, the fuse accepts. You reverse by elbows, ribs practicing doors, tongue counting timber rings. Pressure arrives, signs, departs. The set ticks, reconsiders, holds. You slide forward and test with knuckles, smooth the face with the shovels back until it looks like yesterday. The reed hears only drip and a distant wounded patience. You file that under acceptable and breathe air that tastes of eggs and a dull future. The breakthrough you don't want tries on your tunnel like a poor-fitting coat. When you shave a spoonful, the wall exhales a draught that smells of other men's tea and carbide. Not ours. You freeze until your joints learn humility. A whisper trickles through the clay. No words, just the grammar of breath travelling where it shouldn't. You back a span, lay a prop with tender rudeness, and fit a brattice curtain, Hessian wet and obedient, so air will remember whose lungs it's working for. The candle's beard goes blue, then yellow. You touch the set like a man patting a nervous horse, and think of a tiled kitchen floor at home. Black and white squares, cold in winter. Kettle rattling soft as a friendly lie. Then you put the memory back where it belongs, lift the shovel the way a clerk lifts a pen, and make the wall ordinary again. You spend the next hour building a listening chamber so narrow it could pass for a grudge. Floor scraped flat, roof shaved to obedience, sides stroked smooth until the clay stops writing its own opinions. You rig the reed through a slit so your ear can breathe while the rest of you learns economy. The candle sits in a niche low to the floor, its light a penny spent carefully. The flame licks blue whenever air grows cheap and fattens when the bellows man remembers he's generous. You rest your cheek on clay cool as an unvisited cellar and count breaths in parsimonious tens. Your shoulders learn to be smaller than your shadow. The guide cord touches your hip with the courtesy of a butler who knows you're lying. Somewhere far enough to be rumour, a scrape rehearses ambition. You wait until waiting becomes wait, and the wait feels almost like work. Above, stand to comes and goes in boots and breath. Down here, you eat from your pocket, a wedge of bully that tastes like sorrow practiced, a biscuit coerced into food by tea that resembles stained timber. You pass a peppermint to the bagman, and he hides it like a jewel from weather. Later, his cough arrives already wrapped. You rub whale oil into your heels, and the oil answers by smelling of docks and promises. The corporal's pencil taps the shaft ribs as if testing ribs of fish. 2 taps, then 1, which is how authority remembers manners. The hose's rubber breath warms your jaw like a dog that isn't convinced it belongs to you. Somewhere a rat conducts inventory with its whiskers and files a complaint about the peppermints. Nobody takes minutes. The far scrape returns thinner and more certain, like thread drawn through tight cloth. You ease the shovels back against the face and shave a breath, then another, each slice the size of restraint. The flame grows a narrow beard, and you bow your head until yellow shows manners again. You slide a polling board along the crown where the seam dreams of going on holiday without you. The board kisses wood and the cap ticks approval in steady grammar. 2 tugs along the cord reach your hip steady, and you answer with the smallest nod in the world. The guide cord hums against your belt in a faint private key. Lice reorganize their colonies and vote you governor. Your tongue tastes coins. Your wrists wear bracelets of clay you never meant to like. You lay a camouflet purse where the wall will least resent it. Fuse looping in soft S-curves you pat flat like a nervous cat. Detonator meets primer with a click polite enough to be domestic. Tamping persuades everyone to forget it happened. The match flares sulphur and bites your eyes. The fuse accepts modest employment. You reverse by elbows, ribs pretending to be doors, tongue counting timber rings because watches don't trust tunnels. Pressure arrives as a firm hand on your chest, then recedes, leaving grit to sign its name on your teeth. Boards consider the future, then choose to hold it together a little longer. The bellows hose whispers along your jaw like a timid tutor reminding you to show your workings. You listen with the reed and hear only drip, which is to say you hear permission. A trickle becomes a habit. Water threads the floor like handwriting and the sump pretends to be ambitious. You cut a gutter with the shovel's toe, nudge a slope into compliance, and the trench's distant filth finds direction. The smell goes egg and iron and old boot. Your socks, saints of damp, keep their composure. You add a brattice curtain, Hessian wetted to obedience, so fresh air will remember which end of you to favour. The candle fattens to decent yellow and throws a halo on clay the colour of old coins. The drip insists on your neck like a domesticated rain that never learned doors. You notch a fat figure on the tally splinter and smear it yourself because optimism looks better blurred. Topside borrows your time for timber again. You climb into night and its milk blue flares, shoulders steaming like a kettle that forgot manners. A boy on the fire step offers a cigarette that tastes of hayloft and apology. You trade him a button with heroic pretensions. A minnon shouts its round syllable, and the parapet lowers itself by principle. You shoulder 2 caps. They find the notch in your collarbone like acquaintances who always overstay. Back at the shaft, creosote bites your nose until all wood becomes railway in your memory. You feed the caps down into hands that exist as grip and breath. Lightning plays no part, only mud, and the slow applause of rain on tarpaulin, measuring patience in cold syllables. You descend again because the cord tugs your name without letters. Back under, the listening chamber at last earns its name. Through the reed comes a breath that isn't yours, shaped by a mouth you will never meet. No words, only the grammar of lungs inside clay. You freeze until your joints learn courtesy. You signal 2 short tugs, hold, and feel steadiness return through twine. You lay a second purse farther left, a backup apology in case the first one fails to persuade. Fuse in curves, tamping in hush, plan chalked with numbers kept by teeth. You light and withdraw, elbows counting backward, ribs filing through the door one at a time, pressure signs, dust witnesses, boards decline to comment. The reed reports drip, and the quiet that follows feels like someone putting a finger to their lips and promising, for now, to forget your name. Stand to above squints into a sky the colour of watered milk, flares wrinkling the clouds like bad paper, and you count boots by sound, shuffle, slap the careful lift of men arguing with mud. A runner drops a note that is really just a direction drawn thicker other than the others, and the corporal translates it into the sentence you understand, deeper, quieter, closer. Tea is stern and brown, it scours a small clean window in your chest, then fogs again. You check the cable head, polish the terminals with a patch that once pretended to be white, and wind the reel so it will pay out like manners instead of the panic. The map's pencil spiders fatten their legs where your gallery aims, a black geometry that promises nothing. You nod once to nobody, shoulder the coil like a tame snake reconsidering wildness, and descend until the surface becomes rumour and gravity remembers your name. Back under, the listening slit sips your ear and pours patience into you. Through the reed comes not scrape now, but a soft, wet consonant. Men whispering in a tunnel with lips close to earth, words ground into vowels you almost recognise. You press cheek to the wall, taste earth and damp and the faint soap ghost from your cuff, and hold your breath until the candle frets thin. The hose's rubber mouth warms your jaw, you tilt to give it room to argue for oxygen that doesn't wish to be here. The guide cord hums the smallest, most private song against your belt. Lice relocate their colonies and vote you governor. You count to 30 with your tongue because numbers behave when lungs don't. The murmur fades into drip and the scratch of your own pulse, and you let one measured breath escape sideways so the roof won't learn your address. Collapse tries a rehearsal. First a powdering at the crown like flour shaken from a disapproving hand, then a soft, treacherous sigh that slips a ribbon of clay down your neck and under your collar to find the warm you were saving. You freeze so hard splinters learn to wait. The cap ticks a different tense and the uprights answer, with grammar you respect. You belly back half a yard, heel a prop into the gap in one blunt prayer, and feed a polling board with your forearms until wood kisses wood and decides to believe in itself again. The bagman breathes a swear into his sleeve, then pins his cough under his tongue. The candle shows a blue beard, then fattens yellow when the bellows man remembers generosity. You test the set with your knuckles and accept its patient answer like a credit you intend to repay. The plan grows heavier, a chamber shaped by knees and stubbornness, cribbed so the crown forgets ambition. 3 purses of ammonal married to prim yellow guncotton, like good manners to bad ideas. You run twin leads because wire believes in betrayal when frightened, and pin them high in soft S-curves that won't tattle against corners. Detonators click with domestic cheer. You sign each crimp with a thumbprint of clay and one quiet swear you keep for paperwork. Tamping is liturgy. Press, stroke, persuade. Make the wall ordinary. Make the lie true enough for tonight. You chalk the counts on the face where only your sleeve will read them. Breaths, elbows, heartbeats. And you spit on the chalk to make it decide. The candle approves by staying boring, which down here qualifies as a miracle you can afford. Rituals of living return as if they own you. You piss in a battered tin that says dignity is a rumour, and cap it quick because friendship has limits. Socks off, heels and toes rubbed with whale oil until your hands smell like a wharf at low tide, then dry wool that calls itself mercy. A lice hunt becomes administrative. Seams pinched, collars inspected, 3 captures, 2 escapes, 1 truce. Dinner is tea the colour of old varnish and bully beef coerced into swallowing. A chap shows you a photograph glazed with damp. A girl squinting in sunlight the war can't afford. You look until you remember to look away. The hose breathes on your jaw like a tired dog that still wants to be good. A memory arrives on the edge of a match, sulphur bite. Then the sweet shop in your head opens its door. Jars like stained glass organs. A bell that never met mum in mud. A hand counting coins without shaking. The tunnel edits it into creosote and egg. But the sugar echo lingers and fuels elbows better than tea. You think of a tiled floor at home, black and white squares that taught bare feet the price of winter, and the kettle's lid tapping like a shy drummer. Clay presses your cheek until the memory behaves, and you repay it by scraping 3 quiet bites the size of reasons you'll never give. The lamp's small breath turns the niche into amber for half a minute, and in that honeyed lie you remember the feel of a coin warmed by a counter. Then the flame gutters thin, the hose nudges your jaw, and the shop shuts its door without ringing the bell. You end the watch by making the world ordinary again. face smoothed with the shovel's back until it looks bored, chalk figure added to the tally splinter and smeared so edges won't pretend to last, brattice wetted to coax breath the proper way, cable loops checked for the kinks that turned future into accusation, 2 tugs along the cord steady, and you answer, with one that means understood. The set speaks in patient ticks. You reverse by elbows, ribs drawing the body out, boots finding rungs by faith and habit. At the top, the air tastes indecently large, and your shoulders steam like a kettle that forgot how to sing. In the dugout, a mouth organ considers a tune and chooses persistence instead of melody. Someone measures out tea leaves with the seriousness of surgery. You mark the map's edge with a fingernail notch, a private promise shaped like a cut you can live with. The enemy remembers manners by forgetting them. A camouflet somewhere ahead coughs without raising its voice, and the crown above you loosens its thoughts in a powder that tastes like paper. You press your cheek harder to clay, feeling its cold, its damp, its steady contempt, and hold absolutely still while splinters rehearse patience in your sleeves. The cap ticks a new nervous verb. You back a hand's breadth, heel a prop home so it can argue on your behalf, and lay a polling board along the seam like a discreet hand on a drunk friend's elbow. The candle grows a blue beard, thin and offended. The bellows man gifts breath until yellow returns, embarrassed to have left. You listen with the reed. Their scrape has vanished into the kind of silence that spends money slowly. You don't trust it, which means you're still alive. Repairs become etiquette. You smooth the face with the shovel's back until it looks like boredom carved in mud. A drip insists on the back of your neck and promotes itself to personality. The gutter you cut yesterday finds its religion again, and the sump confesses with a brown belch. Socks volunteer for sainthood. You move the brattice curtain an inch, a miser's adjustment that makes the hose's warm rubber breath find your jaw first. The guide cord hums a private key against your belt. You notch an ugly figure on the tally splinter, smear it with your cuff so hope won't accuse you later, and touch the set because that's how you say, "Please to wood." The tick answers like a clerk who has kept office hours longer than you've had knees. A runner brings a new exploder box bruised by other galleries and smelling of old thumbs. You test continuity with 2 dry touches that make your palm remember bicycles and lightning. The line answers with a faint, obedient tingle. The corporal wants twin leads to the main purse, and a spare loop you'll never admit you're relieved to have. You pin the cable high, paying it out in soft S-curves that won't gossip when frightened. Detonators sit in their tin like sour sweets too proud for wrappers. Guncotton primers grin a prim yellow. You write the counts in chalk on the face, breaths for yards, ribs for minutes, and your sleeve erases half of them, because down here arithmetic has to pass inspection by mud. The candle approves by being uninteresting, a miracle you can afford. Later, the gallery sulks narrow. Clay kisses your shoulders and steals your name from your collar. You lie on the cross and kick the grafting tool with heels that have become arguments. Calves knot, thighs compose essays on regret. Spoil peels away in wet ribbons, cool bracelets that don't ask permission to decorate your wrist. The bagman slides socks past your hip like rent collected by a landlord who believes in punctuality. Your breath becomes petty cash, small counted, always short. A faint whisper arrives through clay, a human exhale that doesn't belong to you, and your ribs forget what moving is for. 2 tugs along the cord, listening. The answer comes steady, and steadiness is the cheapest courage anybody sells down here. Topside borrows you for timber, which is to say for creosote in the lungs and mud around the shins that wants to keep what it touches. A flare irons the night flat and prints your shadow on the boards like a confession. A Minerne coughs its single syllable, and everyone pretends they were always kneeling. You shoulder 2 caps. They find the notch in your collarbone with married familiarity. A boy whose face is mostly freckles offers a cigarette that tastes like hay, apology, and an upstairs room you won't see again. You take 2 pulls and hand it back a breath richer. At the shaft lip, your mouth tastes rain, tarpaulin, and something like tin. You feed the caps down to hands that exist as grip and breath, then return yourself to the shape the tunnel prefers. Back under, the main chamber asks for final courtesies. You line its crib with boards planed by patience, wedge edges tight so the crown forgets ambition, and run twin leads like veins toward a heart you intend to break politely. 3 purses of ammonal sit in their canvas with schoolboy innocence, married by guncotton that smiles prim. You crimp detonators with a midwife's frown and a thief's suspicion, each click a small vow. Tamping as liturgy again, press, stroke, persuade, until the face becomes ordinary as a lie repeated kindly. You sketch the plan a last time, counts by breath, pauses by teeth, retreat marked in elbows, rather than yards. The candle lowers and lifts its small yellow vote. The hose warms your jaw like a dog deciding you're worth guarding if you'll hold still. The corporal wants proof the world will listen. You lay out the exploder's handle like a family tool that has outlived better jobs, polish terminals with a rag that remembers white, and nod when the test buzz climbs your wrist and stops before it can be accused of optimism. Above, the mouth organ discovers a tune with no chorus and plays it anyway. Someone reads a letter about a gate hinge that finally obeyed sense and a hen that still refuses to lay where logic says. You tuck your own postcard under your shirt to borrow its dry. Then the pencil taps once on the shaft rib. Ready. You look at the candle. It looks back like a held breath. You roll your shoulders forward, making yourself smaller than your worries, and let the tunnel close its hands around you again. The hour chooses you. A flare far above irons the sky flat. The corporal's pencil lifts once, and the exploder becomes a family argument you can't postpone. You check the twin leads again, thumb on brass, palm remembering bicycles and lightning, then glance at the candle because superstition likes witnesses. The hose warms your jaw with rubber breath. The reed lies across your knee like a ferret bored of your nerves. Your fingers smell of creosote and the pear-drop ghost of guncotton. Your tongue tastes coin and the days-old tea. You look at the timber, touch it the way men touch shoulders before a fight, and you push the plunger. The handle bites. The current walks away from you like a debt collector with paperwork that knows your middle names. The ground answers with a decision. Pressure pushes your ribs inward, not cruelly, just with the confidence of policy. Air goes thin, then thick, then tastes of warm metal and insult. The candle kneels, sits, stands, and grows a yellow spine by sheer stubbornness and borrowed breath. Dust arrives in a hurry and writes its opinion on your teeth. The cap ticks a new tense. The uprights clear their throats and decide, magnanimously, to continue being wood. You stay very still while your skull finds out who it is without sound. Then you count. Because men who are still employed at breathing brag about being petty and precise. 30 heartbeats. 40. The hose whispers you back to the habit of lungs, and the tunnel loosens its hand from your sternum. Aftershock has manners you respect. Boards complain in small syllables, then remember discipline. Clay rethinks every friendship and keeps most. You test the roof with your knuckles and get patient grammar in reply. Forward now, elbows, ribs, the old door trick, until the face presents a new mask. Smooth where our mouth used to be, bored where ambition lived. The reed tells you the silence you paid for. No scrape, no clerkly tap, only drip counting its eternal inventory. The smell is ammonal's pear sweet mixed with wet iron and old boot. Your tongue files a complaint and is ignored. You smooth the face with the shovel's back until the lie looks natural, then chalk a figure on the tally splinter and smear it because some truths prefer fog. Topside writes a different report. The traverse tastes of rain and clay. The parapet sits lower, pretending it always liked that height. A man says he felt the ground cough under his toes. Another swears the flare fell slower. The corporal listens to the geophone men draw spiders and pronounces the word that buys tea. Satisfactory. You help haul timbers that smell of railways and old decisions, shoulder caps that notch your collarbone with marital accuracy, and carry a box of detonators like a tin of bad sweets to be shared later. The mouth organ tries a march and finds resignation. You drink tea stained the colour of fence wire, and the warmth moves into your chest as if paying rent. Then the pencil taps the ladder. Back to it, careful as arithmetic. The gallery has learned a new accent. Air tastes like someone else's mistake. The candle's flame narrows to a needle, then fattens with bellows charity. A seam along the crown has opinions, and you answer with carpentry. The polling board slides home slick as a fish. The prop heels under the cap with a thump that travels up your shin to take a room behind your knee. You lay a brattice curtain so the hose will love your mouth first. The reed through the slit returns only drip and your pulse filing paperwork. You allow yourself 3 shallow bites of spoil, each cooled with the patient slime that lives at this depth, and the sock slips past your hip with a greedy sigh of rent collected. You mark inches with chalk flattened to a blade and let your sleeve blur them into rumour. Night above grows damp and officious. Rain writes minutes on tarpaulin, while a minnon clears its throat farther down and everyone agrees to have always been shorter. You fetch more cable, copper gut wrapped in gutta percha, a pet snake that behaves if you respect it, and pay it out in soft S-curves that won't tattle when frightened. Continuity test, the exploder nips your palm, that bicycle memory again, and the line admits to being alive. You pin it high, away from boots and temper. The corporal asks for a spare loop because faith in wire is a sin that gets men sermonised later. You nod, which costs less than belief. Then you grease your heels with whale oil that smells of docks, pull on dry socks that try to be saints, and slide back into the shape the tunnel prefers. Late in the watch you listen for the enemy, and hear instead the ocean sound of your own blood, and, beyond it, a memory with mud on its shoes. A kitchen kettle rattling on black and white tile. Steam kissing a window you could afford to fog. Clay presses your cheek cold and damp until the picture learns manners. The hose warms your jaw like a dog that isn't sure you deserve guarding but will try. You press the reed tighter, and the tunnel answers with the luxury you bought at explosive prices. Stillness that isn't laziness, quiet that doesn't plan to talk later. You decide to believe it for the length of 100 breaths. Then you smooth the face again, because work is how you tell time, pinch the candle out to taste smoke like a burnt coin, and reverse by elbows, taking your body with you because nobody else will. The quiet you bought doesn't last. It never does. Hours later, cheek to clay and the listening slit, you catch a human murmur braided with a soft metallic tick, like a spoon kissing the rim of a mug. Not language, just breath working in a space too small for dignity. You hold still until your joints file complaints in triplicate. Candle thins to a blue pin. You bow your head to give it the idea of oxygen, and the hose warms your jaw with rubber charity. 2 tugs down the cord, listening. The reply returns steady. You cut a side pocket the size of a lie you can live with, lay a purse where politeness says it will sting, and tamp the wall back to a calm face. The match bites, the fuse accepts, you reverse by elbows, ribs making doors of themselves, counting timber rings with your tongue to keep panic paying by the minute. Bad air auditions as confidence. The candle staggers, kneels, then grows a thin blue beard that won't shave clean. Your skull begins to throb in a low, slow drum that doesn't belong to you. Carbon monoxide hasn't a smell, only opinions, so you borrow superstition. Spit on your finger, pinch the wick near the roof, watch it widen into yellow when the bellows man persuades the tunnel to remember lungs. You shift the brattice curtain an inch to favour the face and feel cooler air slide along your cheek like a discreet apology. The reed reports nothing but drip and your blood filing paperwork. You sit very still until your bones learn the idea of small again. Then 3 shallow bites, patient as a miser, and the sock sighs past your hip with the greedy relief of rent collected on time. Surface lends you the idea of weather and takes interest. Stand to feels like being inspected by rain. The parapet looks shorter. The sky milk blue and argumentative. You warm your hands over a brazier that smells of bacon's distant cousin and creosote, then rub whale oil into heels until the dugout becomes a wharf remembered by noses. A chaplain crouches at the shaft lip long enough to hand down peppermints and a small prayer that fogs and disappears. You save the mint for the bagman's cough and pocket the prayer where maps go to crease. Tea arrives brown and stern. You bully it into warming the small room behind your ribs. A boy plays a mouth organ and lands again on persistence instead of melody. The corporal taps the ladder, 1, 2, and the order translates into the only sentence the ground respects. Back to it. Closer in, the rumour about tin can alarms proves honest. Your shovels whisper kisses a string you didn't mean to know. It rattles a bright tiny song that would be cheerful if it weren't a threat. You freeze until the set remembers its timber and not judge. You damp a wad of clay and glove your hand with the earth, then pack around the line until music becomes etiquette. With 2 fingers you ease the tin toward quiet. It clinks once, apologises, and lets the wall forget it. You shift the candle to a niche low and mean, soot painting shorthand on wood that never asked to be a ledger. The reed lies across your forearm like a bored ferret. You listen until the stillness grows edges again, then scrape 1 spoonful the size of good manners and take it as a victory nobody will list. Water adopts you without consent. Rain above recruits seams below, and the floor writes its signature in a cold script that learns your ankles by first name. You dig a miser's gutter with the shovel's toe, test the slope with your knuckles, and persuade the sump to remember gravity. The smell goes egg, iron, old boot. Socks try sainthood and nearly make it. The bagman misplaces a boot in a puddle that insists on being a pond. You let him curse into his sleeve and hand back his foot with both hands and a grimace you don't invoice. The candle's tongue goes blue again, then yellow by breath and bribery. You smile once because this is the sort of progress men frame in their heads and never hang. Clay attempts a small betrayal. The crown powders, then sighs. A ribbon of mud slides into the back of your collar like a letter reading you. You heel a prop home until the tick-tick becomes grammar. Slide a board along the crown so the seam will forget travel, and hook the bagman by his shoulder to move him 2 feet where collapse would find him rude rather than prompt. He thanks you by breathing quieter. You test the set with your knuckles. It answers in patient monosyllables. You write a thick figure on the tally splinter with chalk flattened to a blade, and smear it on purpose because numbers behave better when they know their place is temporary. The reed pressed to the face returns drip, the metronome that never gets promoted. End of watch tastes like fence wire and relief. You back out by elbows, take the ladder in hands that have forgotten rounded edges, and stand under a tarpaulin while rain writes its slow book. Tea appears with the personality of old varnish. You drink it because warmth is rent and you're short. You trade a button for a spoonful of condensed milk and craft a kindness out of sugar and pretense. Socks steam by the brazier like surrender flags reconsidered. You mend a torn putty with thread that refuses straight lines. The seam looks like honesty anyway. When you lie down, you set the reed beside your head, as if your ear were a tool you could put away. It isn't. The tunnel keeps digging inside the dark behind your eyes, patient as a debt that knows your address. Relief is smaller than you hoped. A dry patch on the duckboard the size of a postcard, a mug of tea that remembers heat, a rumour that the geophone spiders drew shorter legs after your last persuasion. You hold the mug near your face and borrow warmth without wasting drink. The corporal reads you your own inches like a doctor with news he refuses to dramatise. Above, rain negotiates with the tarpaulin and wins on points. Someone claims to have heard singing from the German sap, a tune about mothers or beer or both, and nobody volunteers to be moved by it. You check the cable head, polish brass with a rag that was white 2 wars ago, and lay your palm flat on the exploder as if it were a chest you might restart. Then you go below again, because the ground believes in habits more than in conclusions, and you work for the ground now. Back under, the face has changed its mind about being wall, and now wants to be arithmetic. You smooth its complaint with the shovel's back until ordinary returns, then set your ear to the reed and listen for receipts. There, a thread-fine scrape, a pause, the tiny violence of a pin tapping wood. Tin can alarm again, strung wide like a nervous harp. You wet a glove of clay around your hand and press the string into silence with the care of a man closing a door for a sleeping child. The bagman freezes so perfectly his cough forgets him. When the line stops singing, you ease the candle lower and let soot write shorthand on timber. The wall pretends to forget. You accept the pretense because forgetting is what survival looks like down here. The seam decides it is a river, and you answer by building banks. Polling board to the crown, heel thumped home until the tick-tick of the cap becomes a grammar you believe. A prop wedges under with the intimate thud that lives behind your kneecap for hours afterward. You cut a kennel to the left, a modest drawer for a modest apology, and bed a purse of ammonal with the reluctant tenderness you say for things that work because they are ugly. Fuse in an S like a signature you won't contest. Tamping is the old apology. Press, pack, smooth, until the face looks like a lie practiced for Sunday. You breathe through your teeth and save your chest for later. You test the bellows hose with your jaw and feel the warm rubber breath like a dog that wants a job. You give it one and the candle rewards you by staying yellow. Your knees complain in a dialect older than swearing, and you pay them in promises you never intend to keep. Pressure arrives courteous as a clerk, stamp, stamp, then withdraws to let dust write minutes on your tongue. Boards complain without insisting. The roof remembers rent is due, but not today. You belly forward, and the wall wears its best lie, smooth as a Sunday face. The reed hears only drip measuring patience and your blood telling itself to keep accounts. You shave 3 spoonfuls, bag them, and move the candle lower so its small sermon won't gossip through cracks. Beyond the face, a breath that isn't yours fades to rumour. You decide rumour can live here so long as it pays quietly and remembers to leave before shift change. You rest your forehead on clay for one unbilled second and let the cool push through your skull until thoughts line up like recruits. Then you forgive the air for being stingy and make yourself small again. Stand to brings the colour of pewter to the world, and you stand on the fire step long enough to remember what standing costs. A boy with freckles offers a cigarette that tastes of hayloft and apology. You swap him a button that once pretended to belong to a tunic that behaved. The mouth organ finds a tune that knows only middle and no end. A letter surfaces from your pocket, news of frost on a pump handle, a gate hinge cured of stubbornness, a hen who lays as and when she pleases. You read it the way men read weather, for signs of a future that refuses to be specific. Then the pencil taps the ladder, which is how authority remembers speech when words cost air. You fold the paper tiny and slide it under your shirt where sweat will make the ink remember your ribs. The cigarette's last inch burns your fingers and the pain proves you still live here. Back to the slit. The candle's tongue goes thin and blue. You pinch, test and borrow bellows, breath, until yellow consents to be seen. The reed pushes cold into your cheekbones while your ear auditions for sainthood. New sound. Not scrape now, but the slow rubbery drag of timber somewhere settling wrong. A patience that intends to become a collapse if not contradicted. You lay a new prop fast and soft, heel it home with a prayer you don't sign, and slide a board under the crown like a hand under an old man's elbow. The set answers in patient ticks, for now is a victory men here brag about by staying quiet. You listen 5 breaths longer than necessary so the roof will think you are polite, and you thank the board with another soft knock, a superstition that saves more men than speeches. When relief comes, it arrives as a tap through timber and the idea of soup. You reverse by elbows, climb into air that tastes indecently large, and hold a mug so hot your fingers learn new words. The tea is fence wire and mercy. Socks steam like surrender flags with second thoughts. The brazier whispers bacon it cannot afford. You mend a seam with thread that refuses straightness and call the crooked honesty. Before sleep you lay the reed beside your bunk as if your ear were a tool you could put down. It isn't. The tunnel keeps digging in the dark behind your eyes, slow as debt and just as personal. Sleep arrives as a negotiation between noise and splinters and the warm stink of men who mean to try again. You accept the terms and let the dark file its paperwork. Morning lends you its bad humour and the corporal translates it into geometry. Sit under their sap head and keep sitting. You check the firing leads like a miser patting pockets. Brass bright, insulation nicked but faithful, reel paid out to behave like manners instead of panic. Detonators rattle in their tin like sour sweets. Ammonal purses squat in canvas with schoolboy innocence. Guncotton grins its prim yellow, eager to marry bad ideas to good carpentry. Socks try sainthood on the brazier's heat and steam like repentant saints. You rub whale oil into heels until your hands smell like dockside promises. The map's pencil spiders thicken where your gallery aims. Someone has shaded in the place where courage pretends to be arithmetic. You pull the reed from your pocket, tap the cuff chalk, and nod because nodding costs less than hope. Mind your manners, the corporal says, which is the whole theology of this job. Down you go, ribs learning doors again, cheek accepting the cool damp that clay keeps for those who insist on visiting. The listening slit sips your ear. The reed carries a human buzz braided with a thin, treacherous jingling. Tin cans strung as bells, a nervous harp across the far face. You wet clay into a glove and cup the line until its song chokes into etiquette. You pack the tins gentle and mean, then tuck a Hessian brattice to coax breath where lungs prefer it. Candle grows a blue beard. Bellows persuades it back to yellow with rubber charity. The guide cord hums a private note at your belt. Your shovel takes shallow, stingy bites, the way a miser eats a gift cake. Spoil socks past your hip with the greedy sigh of rent collected by a landlord who believes in punctuality more than mercy. You cut the main kennel as if you're arranging furniture in a room that hates guests. Cribbed crown, tidy angles, no corners that invite collapse to practice speeches. Twin leads run high in soft S-curves, each loop a promise not to tattle when frightened. You seat 3 purses and their prim yellow primers, crimping detonators with a midwife's frown. Each click feels domestic in a place that refuses homes. Tamping is the ancient apology. Press, pack, smooth. Make the face ordinary, because ordinary survives inspection better than bold. Counts go on the clay and chalk shaved to a blade, breaths to elbow, breaths to set, breaths to kennel, and your sleeve smears them into rumour, which is the form truth prefers under roofs that change their minds. Continuity test nips your palm with bicycle memory. The line admits life without boasting. You touch the set. It ticks like patience practicing. Trouble auditions without costume. A far camouflet coughs and the crown powders. A ribbon of clay slides your collar like a letter that already knows your name. The bagman's ankle sinks to mid-calf. He swears into his sleeve, and you answer religion with your hands. Dig, hook, heave, trade your breath for his foot. The candle keels, the world becomes pressure with the lights off. Bellows' mouth finds your jaw and argues oxygen back into policy. You heel a prop home, feel the thump take a chair behind your knee, and slide a polling board into the crown like a valet catching an old man's elbow. Boards reconsider being friends, then they are. You relight, sulphur bites your eyes, and you taste penny smoke and a decision not to panic for at least 30 heartbeats. 30 is enough. Orders shrink to the size of a plunger. You retreat to the elbow, plant your boots where mud pretends to be ground, and press the handle with the tenderness you reserve for tools that kill politely. The current walks the copper like a debt collector who knows your middle names. Pressure smooths your lungs the wrong way, then gives them back. Dust writes minutes on your tongue. The candle kneels, stands, stays thin, until bellows, charity fattens it. Boards complain in polite syllables and decide to remain wood. You listen through the reed and buy the silence you paid for. No clerkly taps, no hopeful scrape, only drip counting what it always counts. You smooth the face with the shovel's back until the lie looks natural, chalk a fat figure on the tally splinter, and smear it because hope stains. Stand to, tastes of fence wire and mercy. You hold a mug near your face and borrow warmth without wasting tea. Steam paints your nose with a short-lived kindness. The chaplain appears long enough to issue peppermints and a prayer that fogs and disappears. You spend the mint on your bagman's cough and keep the prayer where you store maps. A boy's mouth organ circles a tune that knows only middle. Someone claims the Germans were singing about mothers and beer, which is to say about home. You unfold your postcard. Frost on the pump. Hinge finally behaving. Hen laying where logic says she shouldn't. And press the paper to your lip like a private sacrament. The corporal taps the ladder once, then once again. You translate. Back to it. The ground is waiting. Manners first. Late in the watch, a lark above forgets its job and tries joy. The note falls down the shaft, thin as a pin, and lands on your candle's flame like a dare. You don't look up. You scrape 3 courteous spoonfuls, bag 2, and keep 1 to measure patience. The reed reports only your blood writing receipts, and the drip insisting on overtime. The hose warms your jaw like a dog that has chosen you despite the evidence. You lay a fresh board under the Crown's newest opinion and thank it with a knuckle, because superstition saves more necks than pride. You touch the set, listen to its modest grammar, and let the tunnel press you into the shape it prefers. Small, careful, unremarkable. When relief taps the timber, you reverse by elbows and take your body with you, which remains the only heroism anybody pays out down here. Rumour does lapse along the fire step until it calls itself plan. They'll thrust a new sap tonight, an attack mine if they're optimistic, a mistake if you're luckier than you've been. The corporal redraws the pencil spiders with thicker legs and tells you to sit directly under the place where courage is pretending to be geometry. You check the twin leads, polish the exploder's brass until your thumbs smell like old coins, and count detonators in a tin that thinks it's full of bad sweets. Socks steam by the brazier like saints practicing humility. Whale oil turns your hands to a dockyard. A boy says the night tastes like tin. You say that is the flavour of promises. When the pencil taps the ladder, you answer the way Clay understands, with your shoulders. Down the shaft, the gallery greets you with its usual unkindness, cool breath, wet cuffs, timber that keeps grammar out of politeness. The reed drinks your ear. Through it comes a breath that isn't yours, plaited with a thin, nervous jingle. Tin cans again. You glove your hand in wet clay and smother the string until etiquette replaces music. Candle grows a blue beard. Bellows' charity persuades it back to yellow. You and the bagman trade a look that's really just air conservation in disguise, and his sleeve eats a cough whole. You shave the face with the shovel's back, small, stingy, as if stealing from a ledger you'll have to sign later. The set ticks in patient monosyllables. You accept each one like rent. Close makes an introduction. Your shovel skims a spoon from the face and a pinhole exhales tea and carbide that never belonged to you. Not ours. The candle leans toward it the way any flame is tempted by gossip. You slap clay over the mouth with the rudeness polite men keep for emergencies, pack it flat, stroke twice, and let the wall rehearse forgetting. Heart does arithmetic wrong, then remembers. You make the brattice curtain creep closer by inches, coaching air to favour your mouth first. The reed reports a human murmur turned doubtful, then drip performing competence. You draw a kennel to the left, a drawer for apologies, and bed a purse with prim yellow primer smiling like Sunday manners. Tamping is prayer you don't spend out loud. The camouflet goes off with the confidence of bureaucracy, stamp, stamp, and the roof decides kindly to remain a roof. Pressure pats your lungs in the wrong direction and returns them. Dust writes minutes on your tongue and invoicing on your teeth. The candle kneels, stands, and stays thin, until the hose warms your jaw like a dog who's adopted you without consulting evidence. The reed hears silence bought at explosive prices. No clerkly tap, no optimism with a pick attached, only drip counting its eternal budget. You smooth the mouth, chalk a figure on the tally splinter, and smear it because numbers misbehave when they're allowed to be proud. Then you lie there for 3 borrowed breaths with your forehead on clay and let cool go into bone. Topside lends you a half an hour of almost day. The chaplain appears at the shaft lip long enough to hand down peppermints and a prayer that fogs and vanishes. You spend the mint on the bagman's cough and put the prayer where maps fold. A mouth organ circles a tune that knows only middle and refuses an ending. Tea arrives stern and brown. It persuades one room behind your ribs to remember warmth. You stitch a bootlace through the eyelets that have forgotten hospitality and think of tile at home. Black and white squares, steam on windows, the kettle's lid tapping a signature that never learned mud. The corporal asks for inches the way rain asks for roofs. You give him what arithmetic you have, and keep the rest in secret for courage. Back under, air decides to be creative. The hose clamp gives up its post with a small, treacherous shrug, and the flame shaves itself to blue. A headache climbs slow and methodical behind your eyes, the special crown that bad air likes to award. The bagman loops his belt around the coupling, wrenches it ugly tight, and the bellows resumes the dull heroism it prefers. You tear the brattice curtain, swear into the rip, soak Hessian in sump water that smells like iron and a regret, and pin the wet back into place until it hangs obedient as a tired argument. The candle fattens by degrees. You straighten the face with the shovel's back. 3 courteous strokes that say sorry to clay because superstition pays more dividends than pride. You finish the watch with habits that keep their shape. Touch the set, read the tick, lay one more board under the crown's latest opinion, chalk a fat number, and blur it. Press your cheek to clay long enough to hear patience instead of yourself. 2 tugs from behind, relief, and you answer with one that means understood. You pinch the flame out and taste smoke like a burnt coin, reversed by elbows, ribs making doors of themselves, boots finding rungs by faith and splinters. Up top, rain writes its slow book on tarpaulin, tea pretends mercy, socks steam like surrender are considered. You set the reed beside your head as if ears were tools you could put away. They aren't. The tunnel keeps digging in the dark behind your eyes, steady as debt, quiet as breath you don't waste. Night pretends to be patient and isn't. Through the reed you catch human air braided with the faint tick of something metal being impatient on wood. Maybe a tool, maybe a nervous bell, maybe the far gallery telling itself a story. You make your body into furniture no one notices. Candle goes thin and blue, bellows breath warms your jaw, and the flame remembers yellow like a shy apology. You glove your hand in wet clay and smooth the wall until sound becomes etiquette. The guide cord hums its private note at your belt. Your shovel learns miserly bites again, face shaved with the back of the blade as if stealing from a ledger you'll sign at dawn. The set ticks modest grammar. You accept it because grammar keeps roofs polite. A seam along the crown dreams of travel. You answer with carpentry and quiet persuasion. Board slick as a fish, slid under the cap until drool becomes policy, prop-heeled home until the thump takes a room behind your knee. The bagman's cough practices obedience in his sleeve and passes inspection. You trace the fusible plan on the face with chalk shaved to a blade, counts by breath, not clock, Then smear half the numbers because pride makes roofs curious. The candle's tongue grows blue hair, and you bow your head until Bellows Charity fattens it back. Your tongue tastes coin, your wrist wears bracelets of clay you never applied for. The reed reports a scrape that thinks, then forgets. Close enough to price in teeth. A pinhole exhales tea and carbide that doesn't belong to you, not ours. You pack the mouth with clay and stroke it flat, rude on purpose because courtesy is a luxury after theft. Heart tries arithmetic wrong and relearns it. You drag the brattice an inch closer, miserly with fabric and breath, and the hose rewards you with air that remembers manners. The bagman slides a sock past your hip with the greedy sigh of a rent collected by someone who loves punctuality. You set a kennel to the left, a drawer for apologies, and nest a purse with prim yellow primer smiling like Sunday school. Tamping is prayer you keep between your hands. The pocket goes off with bureaucratic confidence and stamp, and the roof decides to stay employed. Pressure smooths your lungs the wrong way, then returns them. Dust writes its opinion across your teeth in a small mean script. The candle kneels, stands thin, then fattens by Bellows' argument. The reed buys you silence at explosive prices. No clerkly taps, no optimistic scrapes, only drip counting the eternal budget. You smooth the face until the lie looks ordinary. You chalk a fat number on the tally splinter and smear it because numbers that brag invite gravity. For 3 borrowed breaths you let your forehead cool on clay and pretend not to be a man. Stand to on the fire step tastes of fence wire and mercy. Someone hopes to whistle and finds persistence instead. A chaplain crouches at the shaft lip, issues peppermints and a prayer that fogs and vanishes. You spend the mint on the bagman's cough and file the prayer where you keep maps. Tea arrives, stern and brown. It makes one small room behind your ribs remember warmth. You rub whale oil into your heels until your hands smell like docks and promises. A letter mentions frost on the pump, a hinge cured of stubbornness, a hen still laying where logic refuses. You press the paper to your lip like a private sacrament and teach the ink your breath. Back under, you pay out twin leads high in soft S-curves, a polite handwriting for electricity. The exploder nips your palm, bicycle memory, and admits life without boasting. You seat 3 purses in their crib chamber and crimp detonators with a midwife's frown. The plan chalked on the face turns to rumour on your sleeve, which is the only safe way for truth to travel here. The hose warms your jaw like a dog that has chosen you. The candle keeps its yellow. You listen with the reed and hear only drip and blood making lists. Above, a lark tries joy and forgets itself halfway through. The note falls down the shaft, lands on your flame like a dare, and the tunnel pretends not to notice. When the order shrinks to a plunger, you retreat to the elbow, plant boots where mud pretends to be ground, and press the handle with the particular tenderness reserved for tools that kill politely. Current walks copper like a debt collector with all the paperwork. Pressure pats your lungs flat and gives them back. Boards complain without insisting. Dust writes minutes on your tongue. You wait the count you were taught by men, now paid in chalk and silence, then return to the face. The reed gives you nothing but drip earning overtime. You smooth the wall into boredom and write another number you don't trust. The tunnel breathes its damp mineral breath across your teeth and you taste eggs, iron, and the dear stupid notion that inches can be convinced. The late watch arrives with a headache wreath and a candle that wants reasons. You give it bellows breath and a place to be brave. The listening slit sips your ear. Through it comes only the ocean sound of your blood and farther off the thin arithmetic of drip. You let your jaw rest onto your cool clay until memory tries the door. Tile at home, black and white squares, kettle lid rattling its small signature, and you hold the picture steady, not to keep it, but to measure what it costs to set it down again. You do! Air tastes like old coins and timber. Your fingers smell of creosote and peppermint someone didn't live to eat. You scrape one spoonful, patient as a miser. You bag it. The sock sighs past your hip. The roof's grammar stays polite. Stoppage for once stays stopped. You take advantage of the quiet you hired at great expense and make everything ordinary. Face smoothed with the shovel's back until boredom shines. A board slid under the crown where the seam remembers rivers. A prop heeled home until a thump sets up house behind your knee. A brattice curtain wetted to favour mouths. The hose warms your jaw. The candle's tongue thickens to decent yellow, the colour of small lies that save lives. You chalk a figure on the tally splinter and smear it because permanence is a joke you don't tell roofs. You listen again. The reed gives you your own pulse writing receipts. You decide to believe silence for the length of 30 breaths and pay cash. Relief taps timber with the tenderness of a spoon against a mug. You reverse by elbows, ribs making doors of themselves, boots trusting rungs they can't see. Up top, rain has rewritten the trench into gravy, steam lifts from shoulders with the stubbornness of hope. Tea arrives brown and stern, you bully it into warming the narrow room behind your ribs. Socks steam like surrender are considered. A boy's mouth organ finds the tune that knows only middle and no end. The chaplain leaves peppermints and a sentence that fogs. You file both where maps crease. The corporal reads your inches like weather, nods in the tense that fits roofs, and says, again. You nod back because nodding is cheaper than speeches. End-of-shift hygiene is a religion with poor hymns. You warm 2 fingers of sump water over a brazier that smells like bacon's ghost and old nails, then scrub clay out of knuckles until your hands look like tools that learned manners. Whale oil to heels, socks that aspire to sainthood, a lice hunt prosecuted with executive vigour. You win 3 small cases and commute 2 sentences. Bread tastes like apology. Bully tastes like rope that got ideas. You write a postcard with 3 honest words. Still here, love. And the paper drinks them, then pretends to be dry. You fold it small and teach it your ribs. You lie on a plank and feel the tunnel keep digging inside the dark behind your eyes.
It does the work. You do the breathing, and then...
The philosophy of inches arrives because nothing else does. You count in elbows, in ribs, in breaths you loan to timbers and borrow back on fair terms. You learn that mercy is a brattice hung 1 inch closer, that courage is a board slid under a sulking crown, that faith is a fuse coiled neat because panic tangles. You learn to apologise to clay and to mean it. You learn the value of a candle's thin yellow vote. You learn that quiet bought with explosives isn't silence. It's a stillness with a ledger. You learn to be small in ways that save you, and you learn to laugh once a day so the roof won't get ideas. You learn that tomorrow has your address. When sleep finally negotiates terms, it does so without flourish. You pinch the candle out and taste smoke like a burnt coin. The dugout dims to the colour of patience. Socks steam themselves modest. A rat edits the bread bin and keeps no copies. Above, rain writes a slow book that nobody will finish. You settle your ear on the reed by habit and remove it by will. The tunnel keeps digging in the room behind your eyes and you let it, because endings aren't policy here. You breathe small, then smaller, and the dark presses down like a blanket that learned to be kind. Somewhere a lark misremembers morning. You do not. You hold your breath for someone else, then give it back, and this night agrees to keep your place until the ground asks for you again.